Welcome, Autobots and Decepticons. My name is Matthew Flynn, the Gladiator of Chaos, and I am joined by Karton the Klingon, or Troy Pacelli, also known as Karton the Klingon Cleric, and Netta from Netta's Network. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going today?
Yeah, good. We have our usual viewers here.
So glad to see y'all today.
Yep.
And Melissa, I'm glad your son's okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I wouldn't have minded if you did skip this for that, because
Oh,
obviously taking
absolutely. You
care
got to
of
do what
your
you got to
family
do.
is more important, or making your family is healthy and not fatally ill,
Right.
obviously more important. Yep. So now we'll be covering season 2 of Ultimate Alien, or what we've determined is season 2 based on the US or airing order rather than the production order.
That is
Because
just so confusing to me. It
yeah,
really is.
yeah. Because if we went by the production order, then we technically already covered season 2 by that
Right.
logic.
Well, we watched all of it, so we're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. We're ready for as far as you need to go today.
Yeah, yeah. We're going 12 episodes.
And I will say this too. For as confusing and messed up as the breakdown is on the wiki and whatnot. It's also this series, for whatever reason, was very difficult for me to find online. I mean, I'm even talking going to the high seas, going to everything. It was kind of difficult. I was able to pick up um I I guess you would call it season 2, or at least part of season 2, from Netflix by getting the discs, but that only took me as far as, I don't know, halfway through. And then
Yeah,
I was able to find a site online that was hosting them. And I said to Netter, I said, we need to just watch these because I don't know how long this site's going to be hosting these. Let's just watch
yeah,
them and get them, put away in our brain banks. And then, we can worry about the next series whenever. So that's
yeah.
our
Because
little
I mean,
story of what
yeah,
we went through.
yeah. Because I mean, on Amazon, the only DVDs of Ultimate Alien I can find are individual volumes rather than the
uh,
complete seasons.
that's probably exactly why Netflix, had such a partial kind of situation there.
Yeah, it's the same for Alien Force and the original series. Both of those also I can actually find individual season, like full seasons of the original series. Obviously, here in the UK, we only have the individual volumes of the seasons. If I do this, I can show you right there. These green ones, they're the original Ben 10.
Mm-hmm.
These are like 4 or 5. They're the first uh, the first 5 volumes, which is season 1 and 2, or one and then some of two. And then I just resorted to buying the actual complete season, the American version of the
Mm-hmm.
DVDs. That's the complete season. But when it comes to Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, I can't find the any complete season collections, only individual volumes,
Sure, sure.
and also individual volumes for Omniverse as well. But considering that's like only 10 episodes,
Yeah.
But still, you would
so I
think
don't think that's that bad of a thing there.
you would think though that for their fans, they would want them to be able to get a hold of these copies and put them out.
That's the one thing that just drives me crazy
Yeah,
about, and it doesn't matter what franchise it is, all of them. The marketing seems so befuddled and confusing. You would think they'd want to make every dollar they could on every DVD, every toy, everything. And when you run
yeah,
into something like this where there's a bottleneck in the distribution of DVDs, and there's a market for it. What are you guys waiting on?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you have like a region split, where here in the UK we get volumes, then over in America you just get complete seasons.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In fact, it's interesting. I've noticed with Doctor Who, because of the way Doctor Who has been released in about the past 6 years or so, we started doing it where we would do like a season part 1 and a season part 2, and then there'd be a re-release of the complete season. So again, very much meeting the demand and maximizing, the sales, because they're even going to get people that get, half the season and go, oh, well, to heck with it, I'll just get the complete season, and then repurchase it.
Yeah, it's like the company I work for. You can buy exams. They do IT certifications. You could buy the exams separately, or you could buy them all as a group.
Yeah. You want to market it every way that, it will sell. But anyway, that's... and I know there's other things going on behind the scenes with stuff like this, too. There's licensing agreements. It's who wants to pick up and distribute. And, it's not always the IP holder that has control over all of that. But that's how you end up in a situation like this.
If I was in marketing, I would make sure that every possible configuration was available so that we maximized on profits.
One would think.
Yeah.
So, just so I know where we're at, we're starting with, regardless of what numbering you go by, it is the transmogrification of Eunice, right?
Yep, that's the
okay, good.
Starting episode for the season.
Just making sure I knew where we were.
Yep. So, since you've already basically told everyone what the episode is, so it's the Okay, I don't get this. Why is it word like this? I can't pronounce properly. Yeah, you put a Japanese word in front of me and I can pronounce it no problem. I don't get it. Actually, there's multiple words I can pronounce no problem, but I don't know, words like this just confuse me for some reason. Yeah, the transmogrification. I'm just going to leave it. You said it. I'm going to...
One of the interesting things about I don't normally pay too much attention to one of the features on the wiki for Ben 10 is it talks about the translation of the names in different languages. Because it's it goes out to different countries.
You mean the word transmogrification?
Well, all the titles, because Ben 10 is put out in Hungary and in Spanish-speaking countries and so forth, they have to translate these titles. And it's sometimes very interesting to take a look at what other countries will call something, because sometimes the references that they're going for with the titles don't translate very well. So I just was noticing that of the other countries that I see this translated into, the Portuguese version is the only one that maintains transmogrification. The Hungarian and Spanish versions all make it the transformation of Eunice.
Okay.
Well, because they probably don't have a word for transmogrification
Possibly.
in their language.
Possibly,
so
what's the
closest to it? It's transfer of.
I guess.
That's the way I would look at it.
But there is a shade of meaning, and as we get into this story,
Troy loves words.
It is more than a transformation. There is a reason they originally chose the word transmogrification, and we'll get into that when we give away the big secret at the end of the episode.
Yeah. It's also a secret doesn't completely come out of nowhere. Or if you pay attention.
Yeah, they drop hints throughout.
Yeah, so the episode starts with Ben and Kevin racing in their separate cars because obviously they're on like vacation, but they have to go like somewhere like out really far away, out in the wilderness, so that Ben doesn't get swarmed by fans and press and everything.
Right, they're gonna go camping, which nobody wanted to do except for Gwen, really.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few episodes that actually like where they actually consider that when they're actually going somewhere.
Interestingly, it also kind of harkens back to the first episode. You know, how they were camping out in the woods when Ben has his first encounter with, aliens and received
Yeah,
the
the prototype
Omnitrix.
Omnitrix.
Yeah.
Now, here's something I thought of. Okay, so Ben is now being swamped by people everywhere he goes. Well, Kevin's got that facey thing so that he looked normal when he was not
Oh
looking
yeah, the
normal.
ID mask.
So why don't they just make one for Ben or alter that one for Ben so that his face changes so he's not recognized so he can go places? You know?
I have no idea. I have a feeling the writers probably didn't really consider that, especially since that kind of just Kevin's ID mask sort of just vanished after he didn't necessarily need it anymore.
But that would
Also,
be a cool little thing, though. It's like he's running from his fans. He pulls out the mask, puts it on, and then just like, like kind of stops. And everyone's like, "Hey, did you see where Ben went?" You
I
know?
think he went that way. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I noticed that they do that. They don't even acknowledge the whole public identity thing until they need it to be a plot point. So, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
I did also notice, as you can probably see by at least two of the images on screen, actually no, three, Gwen is in Alien Force Season 3 outfit. And
Well,
I
it's
think this
good
is
to
the
know
only
she
episode.
changes clothes from time to time.
Yeah, and I think this is the only episode of the season where she's actually wearing an outfit from a previous season. I'm pretty sure after this episode, she just returns back to the standard Ultimate Alien outfit
Yeah.
she was wearing.
And I wonder if it's just because they picked up, a different reference photo or something when they were doing the art.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like I like to see them in different clothes once in a while because it's like, is that all they own?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like a cartoon logic.
Right.
Characters all wear the same outfit for every episode. And I know some cartoons like play with that, like they have like a closet full of the same outfit.
But from a production standpoint why they do that. It's just so much easier
Yeah.
to, just keep the outfit consistent. Because otherwise you're changing it up all the time. That's why they usually don't like to change like superhero outfits and stuff like that, because it's like just keep it consistent.
And simple, because it's easier to animate that way.
Exactly.
And plus, if they're doing something that the animated character done before, they can take those exact same frames and pop it into whatever they're working on, like a running scene or something.
That's true.
And
That's
they don't
true.
have to worry about the clothes or different.
Reusing animation.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think that's specifically an anime thing. I think most cartoons, regardless of country, do that.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So they're interrupted by a giant pod falling out of the sky and crash landing in front of them, which is I suppose a standard sci-fi trope. Oh, there's an image. Yeah, so and it opens up to reveal they have a smaller pod inside, and Gwen is the first person to actually touch this pod, and it kind of stings her or burns her or something. I don't know what it specifically does. It obviously causes her a moment of pain when she touches it, and this is where we get Eunice, who, when she pops out, she doesn't remember who she is. So we're just piling on different tropes now. So we've got standard sci-fi opening, standard storytelling trope of memory loss.
Yeah.
I wonder if we'll be piled on any more on.
Well, So especially as we get into, you know, as she's going around not remembering, there are some plot points that lead you to believe she's got abilities. You start to wonder if maybe she's not telling the full truth, all this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
she's got powers, right? So my thought was, okay, uh, beautiful naked girl found frozen in a pod and turns out to
Yeah.
have a whole bunch of superpowers, but has this feminine vulnerability. I thought of River Song, or not River Song, River Tam from Firefly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely had the damsel in distress thing going really well. Ben gives her his jacket. You see there in the center.
Yep.
It's-
And of
it's a
course,
while
Ben
before
makes no effort to hide the fact that he likes Eunice.
Right.
What got me is that it took Gwen a while to go, oh, by the way, I have spare clothes you can put on. It's like, why didn't you offer these in the beginning?
Yeah, that should have been the first thing you thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, the girl was naked. It's like you offer her clothes first to cover all of her.
They did at least address the fact that while he's interested in this, new, damsel in distress, well, wait, what about Julie? Well, Julie broke up with me. Well, she didn't exactly. Yeah, she did. She broke up with me. Okay, she broke up with you.
Yeah, because they didn't want it to be that he was like cheating on his girlfriend.
True.
Yeah.
We were on a break.
And we also have Sunder, the bounty hunter from, I think the last time we saw him was season 3 of Alien Force.
Yep.
Because he was stuck in the null void. So he makes his reappearance. And he has been hired to retrieve Eunice.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we don't know exactly why he's trying to get her this early on in the episode. All we know is that he has been hired to retrieve her.
And what gets me is when
We do actually get some hints as to who hired him as well.
Really?
But those hints come shortly before we learn who hired him. So
Oh, I see.
I don't know if that necessarily would count as like. If we should really consider that, or just
right. Well, what gets me is when he's acting like, don't you know who she is or what she is? And it's like, no, how would we know that? We just met her?
Right.
Like, why do you make it sound like we should know who this person is?
I would imagine it's the way Ben is like trying so hard to defend her. Maybe Sunder's like assuming Ben must know more about her or know something, considering how hard he's trying to defend her.
There definitely is a lot of, I don't know if you'd call it miscommunication or just plain lack of communication, but I think a big part of that is the fact that Sundar was the one who was chosen for this mission. And, when we get to the big reveal, it's like, seriously, what did you expect to happen when you put this plan into action?
Yeah. And of course Ben turns into Spider Monkey when he fights Sunder. Or the first time when Sunder first appears.
Okay, that is the most annoying thing that he does, that every time he does it now I just groan. It's like when he turns into a new alien, or whatever alien, Spider Monkey, Gigantosaur, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, dude, do you really need to announce every time? And in one episode, he actually goes, well, it strikes fear in the heart of my enemies. No, it doesn't.
No, you keep believing that, he said. That. Well, no, I think what I thought was best was when he turns into, what is it, Rockjaw? Is that his name? No. What is the dog?
No, Big Chill.
No,
The dog.
the dog.
Oh, World Mutt.
Wild Mutt, right. He turns into Wild Mutt, and Gwen is like, Wild Mutt. And Kevin just looks at her and goes, well, he can't talk. I figured I'd do it for him. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if there was an intended reference here, but she's right. He turns into Spider Monkey, and at one point he needs to rescue Eunice, and I'm like, oh no, don't do a Gwen Stacy storyline here. I mean, this is not
Oh
cool.
yeah. I forgot that part. I caught on to the whole him being a spider monkey and kind of similar to Spider-Man, and Sunder
Yeah,
here is kind of a combo of Green Goblin and Terrax, I think is his
and
name.
Eunice, that blonde
Yeah,
hair
and
is
she's a
just
blonde.
yeah, just screaming Gwen Stacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously it's like near the middle of the episode when Eunice is on top of a hill, like a hilltop by
Yep.
herself. Then Sunder comes down and actually like reveals what's going on to some extent,
Yeah.
and that Eunice is actually an Omnitrix core.
Yep.
And this was actually the fact that she's an Omnitrix core was actually foreshadowed earlier when Sunder was searching for her, because he arrived at the this pod here, and inside there, where Eunice was laying when the trio first discovered this, when it first opened. But when Sunder came here, there was actually like an indent in the pod that's in the shape of an Omnitrix core.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. And in fairness, even as she says, she says something about, what is your name? And she's trying to remember, and she gets out Uni. And that's where they assumed she was trying to say Eunice. She was trying to say Unitrix.
Yeah,
Although at this point, the viewer wouldn't know what that means. We had never heard the term Unitrix before. I did like that Gwen breaks down the etymology, whereas Omnitrix is, all the different forms. Unitrix would be a singular form.
yeah. And of course, at that point near the end of the episode, it's obviously revealed that Azimuth is the one that hired Sunder to retrieve Eunice.
And that's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
Really, for someone who's as smart as Azimuth is supposed to be, what did you think is going to happen when you hire somebody who has an adversarial relationship with Ben, right? And then there's no communication. Hey, Ben, just so you know, this is what's going on. Let's work together on this. No, you decide to put
Yeah.
everyone at odds with each other.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
just
when
brilliant.
When Sunder first appeared, he did mention that he didn't know Ben was going to be a part of this.
Right.
So that just raises the question of how much information did Azimuth give Sunder as in in his like mission of retrieving Eunice?
I'm getting the impression it was like, go get the girl, bring her back to me. That was it.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, not girl because it wasn't a girl then, but
Get the get the Unitrix and bring it back. And he's like, oh, okay, well, here we go. We also get here that as a Unitrix, she has picked up, just as the Omnitrix picks up different genetic codes from the different aliens he encounters, if they're not already in the memory banks.
Yeah.
The Unitrix has picked up the genetic code from Gwen, and
And this is
learns human,
also bringing
female,
up
and
a
then
point that I have been debating whether we should bring
well,
into focus this one
we
particular
we
thing.
don't have to focus too sharply on it, but
I'll do this.
Yeah, see, it's not. Nanette
I
and I
think that's a
talked
case
about that
of
when
the
it happened,
writers not
and it's.
really thinking through the implication of what the story is saying,
But
or
they
what the like
actually
the
did address it. They really did address it when Azimuth is explaining what happened. He said it reached out to Gwen, picked up her genetic structure, and then randomized it. This is not a clone of Gwen. It just reached out to Gwen, read her
yeah
genetic structure, and said, okay, human, female. Let's
yeah
randomize this, and this is some other generic, you know,
yeah.
whatever.
Also, doesn't help
Not
that she's
related.
wearing Gwen's clothes. that
She
that
is.
doesn't exactly help either.
No, it doesn't. But again, it's just she happens to
Yeah.
be.
Although
Uh,
they do directly call Eunice Gwen's clone or copy or whatever it is they specifically say.
yeah, I think that's really kind of stretching it, though. I think
Yeah,
because let's face it, the artist didn't in any way make her look like Gwen. She
Yeah.
doesn't.
yeah,
So different hair color, I think different eye
I
color,
think
definitely different face shape. So you should
yeah.
not
Eunice has
read.
green eyes. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, right
But
here.
you really
Eunice
shouldn't
has
wear.
green
You shouldn't really read too much into that specific thing
eyes. Yeah,
because it's just like when Ben goes and he picks up the genetic code of another alien. He's not actually making clones of those aliens. And then when
yeah,
when he restores a whole race of these creatures, they're not all, well, in one case they were all clones, but generally
yeah,
they're not all clones. They're randomized so that you don't have some sort of genetic bottleneck.
yeah. It's not always consistent with Gwen. Sometimes her eyes are green, and then sometimes they're not.
Well, I mean, it's entirely possible that if they needed to explain it, then, well, the Unimatrix can alter and change things from time to time.
Yeah,
It could also depend on the mood. Like, for example, my eyes are blue, but there are times when they could be a darker blue, and sometimes they're a lighter blue. It depends on my mood.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
and I'll be honest with you, I never really fully understood what the whole idea, because Azimuth reveals that before he came up with the Omnitrix, he was going to make a whole bunch of Unitrixes. Unitrixi? Multiple unit. Okay, that doesn't help either. You know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
And they were each going to be individuals. And then he was like, no, I'll just do the one that does all of them. But it does beg the question, with the Omnitrix, you have one individual who turns into other aliens. With a Unitrix, you have no starting creature, and one is fabricated by the Unitrix. And what Azimuth and Sundar are trying to say, well, this isn't an individual. This isn't a sentient being. This is just a Unitrix. It's a machine. And I kind of wish, even though it's clear the intent, I wish that Ben would have verbalized it a little better and said, now, wait a minute. Regardless of what she was when she came to Earth, she is now a sentient being. This is life. This is
Yeah,
intelligence. This is someone with feelings, an individual. You can't just treat them like property anymore. Maybe that would have come off a
yeah.
little bit preachy, but I think this is an example where a messaging like that would have been perfectly justified.
Yeah, I can definitely. I definitely saw that message early or late at the very end of the episode, and
Because
we even had Ben like when he was like talking to Azimuth about this. He even said he was even like, I'll fight you, and Azimuth kind of looked in for a moment and was like, I do believe you will, and then
and
he like
that's I feel even that transaction there, it kind of loses some of its potential gravitas, because it's clear to us anyway that he would be willing to fight for somebody's life, for somebody's individuality. because of the way that it's presented, you don't get the impression necessarily that Azimuth gets that. It might just be, okay, I'll let her live because it's what you want and I'm willing to concede to you. Not, oh, I understand. She's deserving of life, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, it felt a little clunky when they really had an opportunity to do something a little bit more with it.
Yeah. And then right at the very end, Sunder asks Azimuth if he's going to get paid.
Yes.
I feel like
Fair
he probably
question.
should be paid because he did sort of complete the mission he was hired to, just not in the direct, just not directly and in the exact way Azimuth probably wanted him to.
Yeah, and Nanette and I had this conversation too about that, and I said, well, look at it from the point of view of a lawyer, you know. I mean, well, barrister. If they lose their case, they still get paid. I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, they talk about billable hours. It's like, look, I get paid for my time, the time that I put in on this case, whether I win or lose. So I would argue it's the same kind of
Yeah.
thing. I did the work, even if I was unsuccessful. But I would think that if you are a bounty hunter, that might be part of your contract. You know, you have a retainer, you have, a per diem, and you may have a bonus for, bringing it back or whatever. But they didn't get that far into it either. I want the
Yeah.
details. I want details.
I thought you were going to say
Yeah, that's
the
fine.
truth. I said, you can't handle the truth.
I can't handle the truth, or at least the writers of this thing couldn't. They wanted to keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. Next episode. Eye of the Beholder. I did consider making a Dungeons and Dragons joke for this, but I couldn't be bothered.
Fair enough.
Also, I don't really know much about Dungeons and Dragons, so
No, Troy does.
Yeah, but it
I'm pretty
would
sure
be a little bit of
beholders
a
are those eye things.
Yeah, it would be a little bit of a stretch because actually, both Dungeons and Dragons and this episode are making reference to the same, the same touchstone. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's why Gary Gygax, jokingly makes a literal eye monster and calls it a beholder. So. Bit of a stretch to connect these two. They're just drawing from the same, truism.
Yeah. So we have the reappearance of Bazel. I think this is the possible second or third time we've seen him. I think that's the third time we've seen him.
And he's still a complete jerk.
I mean, even the characters in the episode are aware of that.
And the ever faithful Ship knows that his master's in trouble, or his maker, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
He has to go help him.
No, he would be the ward. What would he be if you're the ward? What's it?
Patron? I don't know.
I don't know. Patron makes me think of like a bar rather than rather than a pet, or him. Ship kind of acts more like a pet.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's like it was the guy that took care of him before he went to Julie, so there was a connection there. Despite the fact that this guy treated him like dirt.
Yeah.
Yep. And also is very willing to just sell Ship off to whoever will pay him.
Not a very nice guy. No, that's very true. And that becomes very clear because he's on a treasure hunting expedition, and he runs afoul of somebody's sacred shrine.
Yep. A sacred religious area that he was under the impression was ruined because of the way it looked. Although how we say that the way this place looks is how their religious text or something say it's meant to look or something. Maybe it's part of their religion for it to look like this.
I actually thought that he probably was actually making a fair point. I think he struck a nerve when he said, well, it looked like it was a bunch of ruins. Well, yeah, maybe we should be kind of restoring and upkeeping a little bit more than just guarding.
Yeah. Well, that does kind of go into the whole different cultures viewing something like maintaining something and guarding something. They may have a completely different view of that.
True, very true.
Like how the way it looks right now to them, they might actually view that as them keeping it clean.
But we do see him coming into this, I don't know, Stonehenge-looking sort of structure, and trying to pry out the eponymous eye from one of these statues.
Now, when you first see him, though, there's that big hole that he crawled through, so I presumed it was missing to begin with, and when he kept saying he didn't know what they were talking about or where it was, that was true because he was going inside to take whatever was in there. That makes that clearer.
But that was clearly intentional, because at this point we're still believing he doesn't know what they're talking about. They needed to keep that impression alive for the story to work.
Yeah, because at the beginning he was holding two of them. Oh no, he had one and he had pried one out, second one out of the statues,
right?
Like out of the face of the statue. But there was three statues there.
So
obviously they were looking for the third eye.
So there was some ambiguity, and that was intentional.
Yeah. Although, given that we, as the episode goes on, we learn where the third eye is.
Yeah.
Because Basil keeps burping.
Yep.
I don't know what compelled him to eat it or swallow it or whatever he did to it. I would assume maybe that was him trying to store it.
Yeah, he was just trying to hide it away, like smuggling a watch out of Germany.
I don't think galvanic mechamorphs have butts.
I know. Just an analogy.
I mean, technically, anywhere on them could technically be a butt because of the whole them being malleable and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, once again, Ben kind of is relatively disinterested in Ship.
Right.
Which I still find kind of strange, but that's just me.
Well, he does kind of still look at Ship the way I think the audience is meant to look at Ship. Faithful dog, but kind of low intelligence.
I mean, it
pet.
wags its tail.
Yeah.
Butt.
Whatever.
Yeah. And we also have when Ben refuses to go with everyone else to help Basil, and then he's then talked into helping them by Jimmy. I do find it funny that Jimmy's just sitting there eating like peanuts or something. I think it's peanuts he's eating. Mm-hmm. He's just sitting there eating them, and he offers Ben some, and Ben's just yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
Which, weirdly enough, a few episodes later, that information will actually be relevant.
Yeah.
By the fact that Ben doesn't want any of the peanuts. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't say anything specific. He just says that he doesn't want any of them. Actually, you know what? When we get to that episode, I'll actually clarify what I mean by that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, so this we see when Ben is convinced to actually help Julie and the others, he turns into Jet Ray and flies through space at hyperspace or hyper speed space, whatever, which I was not aware Jet Ray could do.
There are, and I was reading the trivia on several different episodes, and there are
Yeah.
abilities that some of these aliens have that it happens once and you never see it again, and I guess the writer has explained it away as a glitch in the Omnitrix. Excuse me,
Yeah, the
which tricks does he
Ultimatrix.
have right now? The
The Ultimatrix.
Ultimatrix, yeah. That it was some sort of a glitch, and whatever. I guess that means it happens once and he never gets to do it again.
Yeah, that could be a viable explanation. It's definitely supported by the fact that after Ultimate Alien, we never see Jet Ray again, so we'll obviously never know if he can repeat it after he no longer has the Ultimatrix. Also, Jet Ray's not the only alien we won't see once Ultimate Alien is concluded.
True.
There's like 2 other aliens we'll meet in this season that we won't see again after Ultimate Alien finishes. I think there's one more, I think, but I don't remember the name of that alien or what it is, so I'll have to look that up at a later point. Actually, here's one thing that I've been thinking about when watching these. How well utilized do you think the Ultimate Alien feature has actually been utilized in the show so far?
Well, there's a couple different ways to address that question. On the one hand, if you look at the ultimate aliens, the ultimate versions of the various aliens as just being larger, more powerful, more refined abilities, I'd say they've done a decent job. He'll choose, for example, Humongosaur, and then when it becomes clear Humongosaur just isn't strong enough for the task, he goes Ultimate Humongosaur, right?
Yeah,
Um, but from a different point of view, if you think of the ultimate versions of these aliens as just being other options within the Omnitrix, other aliens, you have a
yeah,
greater option for diversity that I think Ben really doesn't. He always talks about wanting to get access to master control, but it's like, well,
yeah.
why should you have access to master control? You're not even maximizing the use of the aliens you have access to, you know? So,
Yeah, they're like 30 plus aliens he has currently.
and we only see about 8 of them, in a
Yeah,
season.
And if he was really using his aliens to his advantage, he would use what's the one that's the big brain?
Oh, yeah.
Brainstorm.
You
Yeah,
should be
he
using
would use
Brainstorm
that.
a whole lot more,
Well,
yeah.
no, you're not getting my point.
Oh.
I would use Brainstorm to figure out how to get to the master control on the Omnitrix.
Well, there's a
It's
good
supposed
point,
to be
too.
like, uber smart.
Yeah.
Hey, but Ben's son did a similar thing in the original series, the alternate future. Because Ben's son turned into grey matter, hacked the Omnitrix,
That
and
was
gave
the other
himself
one I was
master
thinking of.
control.
Gray matter.
And grey
Yeah.
matter is equally as smart as Brainstorm.
I
I don't
always
know
kind of
which one is specific, which species is specifically smarter, but they are of equal intelligence.
Yeah.
I always thought that I just forgot his name again. The big brain one.
Brainstorm.
Brainstorm. I always thought Brainstorm was kind of like the daddy of gray matter.
Yeah.
Because, because you got this little tiny gray matter, then you got this huge Brainstorm.
Yeah. But the other thing, too, is that he has demonstrated clever use of multiple aliens and never goes back to abilities he's uncovered. Like, he's done, what was it, Echo Echo?
Yeah, making multiple echoes, then setting them to human, and then turning then those three individual versions of Ben then turning into different aliens.
Yeah, he's totally missing out on opportunity there. But
Yeah, I mean, the only drawback to that is that it splits his was it
personality.
emotions or his personality is
Yeah.
split between the three, or I would
But
imagine split between however many
that
he
in and of
makes.
itself is another shortcoming of his use of those. I honestly feel like for all the times that we have examined his use of Echo Echo, it's like, and when we first saw Echo Echo, you had that discordance between them, like they were fighting amongst themselves.
Oh
And
wait, I think that was Ditto,
oh, I'm
Ditto that
sorry,
was
yeah, that was
arguing
Ditto.
amongst
But
himself.
it's the same
I mean, they have similar
concept.
powers, so I can
Yeah,
see the confusion there.
and it's a similar. I think it reflects something about his psyche. He's got some internal struggles that he hasn't worked out yet, and as he matures, if he can get through that, then you might not have that problem. He would have a central zen, so to speak, that could have all the different Echo Echo or Dittos or whatever, kind of working together as a unified whole.
Yeah.
But I guess there's got to be room for growth in the character.
Yeah. Okay. And next episode, Victor the Spoils, which is obviously another episode name that's clearly drawing from a saying.
Right. To the victor goes the spoils, but this
Although,
specifically is referencing Victor, or Dr. Victor, which.
Yeah, from the original series.
Exactly.
Who was actually mentioned in the season finale of the first season, or last season.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was mentioned that Kevin absorbed the powers from Dr. Victor. And they even make reference to that in this episode where when they see him frozen in a block like this, they both Gwen and Ben look at Kevin and he's like, "What? I didn't." He's like, "What? I didn't do this to him." He's like, "I left him in the no void." He's like, he was alive when I left him in the no void, or null void.
Right.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of on the nose references to Frankenstein of lore, right? So we get that the monster is frozen in an ice block, the hunchback assistant, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. They're in a castle with a laboratory at the inside it, or in one of the rooms.
Even the reference to the nobility, being the ones responsible for the monster and and whatnot. Found that very interesting too.
I mean, I even put that in my notes that this has kind of a very Universal monster movie kind of vibe to it.
Yep, and I think that was absolutely intentional. Even referring to the Hunchback as Fritz, which was the name of Bela Lugosi's character in the Son of Frankenstein.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yep.
Yeah, I only have the first couple of Universal monster movies. Like the first Dracula, the first Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
In fact,
all of them.
Fritz
I have a collection right there. I don't know if you can see that properly.
Oh yeah.
This one about here. It's a Blu-ray collection.
What's interesting is Son of Frankenstein actually has more references in this episode than anything else, because again, we're talking about the prince, the son of the king here. So look at it as Son of Frankenstein. Again, Fritz being a character from Son of Frankenstein, and the main driving
Yeah.
story for Son of Frankenstein was Fritz wanted his brain to be put into the body of the creature, and you do get this brain swapping thing happening in Son of Frankenstein, which
Okay, I
is,
was
of
not aware
course,
of that.
the
Although I've
driving
not seen
story
Son of
here.
Frankenstein, so it's
Mm-hmm.
understandable. I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were saying?
And that's basically the driving storyline behind this episode. We have two noblemen who are trying to control the creature, but specifically, the king wants his mind put into the monster so that he can be
Yeah,
immortal,
maintain
so that
his
he
seat
can,
on the throne.
yeah, exactly, maintain his vitality.
Yeah. Oh, and Melissa Harris brings up a good point that over here we got the Hammer horror films, or later after the Universal films.
Yeah, there's
With
some interesting connections there. I mean, in the beginning, it was kind of like they were just doing their version, but then there was a bit of synchronicity between Universal and Hammer Studios, so they allowed Hammer to kind of do their own versions of specifically the Universal monsters, which is also why the Hammer horror Frankenstein creature, you know, at first doesn't look like the Universal, you know, Frankenstein, but then he does, you know, and they change back and
yeah.
forth.
I don't know. That's why I was sending you so you can get them.
And then from a marketing standpoint, this is just a little side note. Right now, Mego, which is the toy company that I really love, really support, get these action figures. They're putting out as many of the Universal monsters as they can, but they've also got the license to do some of the Hammer horror creatures too. So they've done a Christopher Lee Dracula. They've done the Reptile. They've done Von Helsing from the Hammer horror, so that's Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and we have what was it? There's also a part in this where the European country that I feel like probably isn't a real European country, but is European or European sounding, and everyone has vaguely European accents.
Right.
Yeah, the country itself is currently in like a civil war.
Yeah.
And it's like a group of rebels fighting against the main government.
Right.
Which,
so it's the name of the country is Zarkovia, which of course sounds like Sokovia from the Avengers, but they're not connected. But again, two fictitious, you know, Balkan states.
Yeah, and obviously there's like a part where you would probably think like the main characters would join the rebellion and fight against the government, or like, you know, choose a side or something, but they don't do that at all. They stay out of that kind of area, that area of the political system of the country, because I feel like most American heroes aren't exactly going to make things better by involving themselves in the political situation of a foreign country. Yeah, we also have just because the rebels are the ones fighting against government doesn't necessarily mean they're the good guys. Although we don't get any kind of evidence to support either side being good or bad, or like straight black and white good and bad. In fact, we don't see anything from the rebels whatsoever. I think we see a few of them fighting outside. We don't get any information on why they're rebelling, or like what their actual viewpoint on the country is, and that sort of thing. And of course, the soldiers of this country are under mind control by these like mechanical things like mechanical helmets and everything that they're equipped with that's basically taken away their free will. Oh, okay, it appears Google is not being very helpful right now. So that's about everything we've got on this episode?
No, that's all I got.
Yeah. Okay, next episode, The Big Story. Okay, this is the one where I was mentioning about the, Jimmy offering Ben some of the peanuts that he has.
Yeah.
And him not, choosing, him saying, no thank you, to that. Because in this episode, we have plant monsters that can be destroyed by peanuts, and there's a small little line that will kind of indicate to you that Ben has been taken over by these plants. Obviously, it happens in this episode. So if you pay attention during the previous two episodes, or the previous episode before, the one where Jimmy's acting as a psychiatrist for Ben, and because in this episode, the plant copy posing as Ben says to Jimmy that he's allergic to peanuts, which, given that the peanuts will kill him if they make contact with him, or with that plant copy, then it makes sense that he says he's allergic to them. But obviously that would also notify the audience that it's not the real Ben, because if Ben really was allergic to them, he would have said that when Jimmy offered him them before in the previous episode.
True, but it certainly raises a question in the audience's mind, because I remember, watching through this episode the first time, I was like, okay, previously he had offered him peanuts when he originally did, and Ben was like, no thanks. It was like, it almost seemed like, I'm not hungry, thank you, but no. Whereas in retrospect, it could have been that he was allergic and just never brought it up or didn't say it at the time.
And when Jimmy was being chased around the store, I thought for sure that big stack of peanuts was going to come into play.
Either that, or at one point he takes and pours out some oil or something from to slide on. I thought for sure it was going to be peanut oil.
Yeah.
Nobody thought of that.
And we also have more great moments with Raph.
I love Wrath. I really do.
See, I don't like that character.
Really? I do.
Yeah.
He's very
He's
comical,
fighting
in my opinion.
7-7. And he's like, ooh, karate.
Yeah. I'm going to call you Karate Guy.
Yeah, here's one. So this is this episode, I suppose you could consider it like a combination of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and the old tale of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, or to some extent.
Well, it definitely does start out with the very clear major theme of The Boy Who Cried Wolf. That's true. The whole Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing, though, they hold off on. I mean, honestly, I thought that what was happening was that Ben and Gwen and whatnot were somehow being
hypnotized?
Yeah, controlled or something by this creature. Very much like we'll see it later on in the season with another big bad. But no, what we eventually discover is that they've literally been replaced with, Invasion of the Body Snatcher-esque pod versions of them. And the originals are kept, in pods in the lair of the alien or whatever.
Yeah.
Although that does end up being very convenient for fighting these creatures, because then you free the originals, and then it's okay to destroy the duplicates, because they literally are just duplicates. They're plant-based
Yeah.
duplicates of the original
Yeah, because
creatures.
they don't have the powers of the
Right,
people they're copying.
right,
Well, except Ben, but that's because they took the Ultimatrix from him,
right.
and they don't even explain how they did that. I mean, even Ben's confused as to how they managed to do that.
But even without explaining it, though, it's very easy to headcanon it, because they duplicate. He even said, I believe they said something like they duplicate him down to a genetic level. So all they did was they confused the Omnitrix and made it think that he was Ben.
I mean, how Ben originally got the Ultimatrix from Albedo is like Albedo pressed like a button on the arm, and then it enlarged, and then he just slid it right off his arm.
Right.
And then Ben put it on his arm, pressed the same button, and it shrunk back down onto his arm.
And not to get too far ahead, but we have a later episode come up where the Omnitrix gets confused and mistakes Kevin and Gwen for Ben, and they end up getting connected to the Omnitrix. So
yeah, that's Inspector 13.
Right.
Yeah, that episode, we're not going to be covering that episode for this season. That's going to be
but
one
I'm
of
just
the
pointing
later
out
episodes.
that this is another example of the Omnitrix being able to be confused about who Ben is, who the real Ben is, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
What we have is a situation. You said the boy who cried wolf. Although I would soften that a little bit, because with the boy that cried wolf, you have a child making up stories to garner attention for himself. And really, Jimmy is never. I mean, sure, he's tried to get attention for himself, and he but he's always had an altruistic purpose for it, right? He's never actually made up stories. Everything he said has been true. Maybe he was unwise to share it, and that sort of thing, but he never lied about it. And so it does seem very unfair that people don't believe him,
Yeah. And we also have when Jimmy goes on to the Wilharang Nation show, or news show, and he like tries to tell everyone that something's wrong with Ben, and he needs their help and everything. And obviously Wilharang doesn't even give him the chance to really properly explain what's going on. He just takes bits of the information that's being presented to him and then taking it completely out of context.
Yeah.
And basically spinning what's being said to benefit himself, which isn't too surprising for mainstream news.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true.
Right down to not even letting the other person properly say anything.
So when earlier we said that this is very much like a boy who cried wolf situation, I would say the only difference is this is a boy who cried wolf repeatedly, and every single time it really was a wolf,
Yeah. Yes, we also, and obviously the invasion of the body snatchers connection is fairly obvious, because it's plant aliens copying people and replacing them with plant copies, and keeping the real people in pods. Although I don't think we ever learn what the overall purpose of the plant alien doing this.
Nah, I just assumed wanted to take over the world, whatever. No, one thing that might actually give some additional insight. At one point, he turns into what is the swamp fire,
Yeah,
and,
swamp fire.
and we learn that swamp fire is unable to control weeds. I think the
Yeah,
implication there was meant to be that these creatures, or this creature and its spawn, are a kind of weed, the equivalent of a
yeah,
weed, a galactic weed, so to speak, going planet to planet, kind of taking over, which is what weeds do, right?
yeah.
But on the
I
other
mean, there
hand,
was.
on a more mundane level, that does seem kind of crappy because, I would love it if I had the Omnitrix and could just turn into swamp fire and weed my garden and get rid of all the weeds in the grass. But
Yeah,
no, I guess that's not that simple.
I imagine doing the same thing for all the other plant life in the garden may still be useful.
Yeah, help your garden grow and stuff, sure.
Yeah, there was also a moment where the copies of um, Ben, Gwen, and Kevin they mention about I think it's once that they've taken over, there'll be like no wars. I think they said no violence, and then the Kevin one said no fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I also find it funny that the copies, even though they weren't the original people, they still sort of act somewhat like them. So the plant copy of Kevin still acts somewhat like Kevin.
Yeah. Right, they do seem to have a little bit of the personality.
Yeah, there's there's an episode later on with Raph that I also found very funny, but we've not got to that episode yet. Next episode, Girl Trouble. No, Girl Trouble,
Yep.
and
And the
yeah,
introduction of another cousin.
yep, cousin Sunny, who we don't ever see her parents, so we have no idea, like, in what relation to the rest of the family she has. Like, is she like another direct cousin, or is she like a cousin but like further off from the main family? It's not
Right,
particularly clear on that.
because the only relationship we know is that they share a grandmother. So
Yeah,
we don't know
and
if she has any human parents in common.
yeah, and as far as I'm aware, Grandpa Max had two sons, I think, or it might have been three. It was either two or three sons, and I think Grandma Max also had two brothers, I think. Yeah, because at least one of those brothers we saw in the actual original series, because it was the Big Fat Alien Wedding episode,
Yeah.
where
So
Grandpa Max's
so
brother,
the
I believe it
question
was in that episode,
is,
but I think there was another one.
yeah. So the question does become then: is Sonny related to Grandpa Max or not? And I would argue probably not. I would
Yeah.
say this is another, uh, you know, descendant of their grandmother, and I'm forgetting her name now.
Verdona.
Yeah, this is another granddaughter of Verdona, and therefore, yes, a cousin to Ben and Gwen, but that doesn't make her a Tennyson.
Yeah. So, like, if she was like the child of like one of Verdona's siblings, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, as Verdona is a an anodite. Actually, I don't think we know if male anodites have the same powers or if they're no, because the only male characters we see who have the potential of being an anodite don't have any of the powers.
Well, it
I suppose
is
that's because they're
inferred.
part human. Maybe that's why they don't have powers.
There's that, but there's also the inference that Ben can learn anodite abilities, as we
Oh
saw
yeah,
in
from
the.
a later episode that we
Yeah,
will get to.
exactly. But that calls into question: is he channeling anodite abilities, or is he like Charmcaster, able to learn them like from books and
Yeah,
stuff?
like what able to like channel mana through him
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
obviously anodites they aren't actually like they're just like conduits for the mana to flow through them, and they obviously more mana flows through them, so they're obviously more power. They're more powerful with it.
But actually, I'm gonna backpedal a little bit on the family relation, because it does we do get
Yeah.
some insight from Gwen's mother. Gwen's mother is the one who says, "Yeah, Sonny's coming to stay with us." She's obviously made these arrangements with Sonny's mom. Therefore, you get the impression that um, Natalie, which is Gwen's mother, that Natalie is somehow related to
Yeah.
her. So yeah, and well, is Natalie is anodyne, right? Like half.
No, it's Gwen's father that's the one that's
It's Gwen's
genetically
father.
linked
Gotcha.
to he's the one who's part anodite but doesn't have any powers.
Okay. Well, that is unfortunate then, that it was Natalie playing this role and not the father. It would have made more sense if the father was saying your cousin is coming to stay.
Yeah. I do like the fact that Gwen's mother is like when like Antonio here like comes up to the front door,
Uh-huh.
like he's very clearly not human, and
Right.
Gwen's mother's like not even phased by this. She like just treats him exactly as she would treat anyone else.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, cousin Sunny is voiced by the same voice actor as Gwen, and also she is using the exact same animation model as Gwen as well, just colored different.
Sure. And it makes perfect sense. I do love uh the so we kind of poked at the fact that Eunice was sort of a clone of Gwen. Well, here we have Sunny kind of hitting on the boys, and she sits down between Kevin and Ben, and clearly hitting on both of them until she is told that Ben is her cousin, and immediately she takes
Yeah.
her arm away, and she's like, "Okay, then."
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's just creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, okay, quick joke, and then we're done with that.
Yeah. It is also nice to hear the like the same voice actor like give a different performance, or like
And
give like
yeah,
a similar performance but like in a different way.
it
Because like you
very
could
much.
consider Sunny to be like Gwen, but she like obviously because she sounds like Gwen because it's the same voice actor, but it's like the voice actor's clearly giving like a different performance, putting a different spin on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, right, and that's what made me think of Samantha and Serena from Bewitched. Where you have
Yeah,
Elizabeth Montgomery playing, the good twin and the evil twin kind of a thing. And
yeah,
I'm not sure that that's what they were going for, but again, you have magic user, witches, so to speak. It very much seemed to be, the bewitched Serena, analogy, or touchstone or whatever.
yeah. And we also have the return of the killer robots from Dimension 12.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of I found it rather humorous that they're trying to figure out how to predict, when and where they're going to show up and how to stop them, and that's kind of a running theme throughout the episode.
Yeah. And there's even that moment where I think Gwen's like trying to figure out why they keep coming to Earth, and Kevin's just like they're killer robots. It's in the job description.
Well, he's not entirely wrong there. That's true.
Yeah.
It's basically what they do.
They got one job.
And I believe this episode's the only time we're gonna see the killer robots from Dimension 12 in Ultimate Alien. But they are gonna show up once more in Omniverse, but I couldn't find any information of them appearing anymore after that. I don't know if we would have had more episodes, if they would have ended up being like becoming like stale and repetitive.
I don't know.
This does seem to be another example of wasted resource,
Yeah.
So although they mention it, they never really seem to explain it. But you get the impression that Sunny is actually more powerful than Gwen. She's able to fly. She's got other abilities. She's able to kick the tar out of the robots.
Yeah.
It is something I kind of wish they would have touched on, because I felt like this was a perfect opportunity to say, yeah, she's not really more powerful than Gwen. It's just Gwen holds back more.
Yeah. And of course, Gwen uses magic alongside her anodite powers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Sunny doesn't know any magic. She just relies completely on her anodite powers.
Right. And it would be nice, and I don't think this is going to be the case, but it would have been nice if by introducing these questions, it causes Gwen to question them herself, and maybe in time she starts focusing on her anodite abilities and developing them more.
Yeah.
Because she sees, Sunny being able to do what she does.
Yeah. We also don't know if she has any human DNA in her, or if she's like a full-blooded anodite.
That's a good point. We don't know.
Because obviously Verdona is a full-blooded anodite, and she can disguise herself as a human.
True.
And obviously Sunny does the same thing. She just makes herself look human. Now, whether she actually has any human DNA in her, or if she's just completely anodite, I have no idea.
If she's completely anodite, that would explain why she's far more powerful than Gwen, and she seems to have different uses for her magic than Gwen did. When she was doing like whips and all sorts of stuff that Gwen didn't know how to do.
Yeah. That was my thinking with that as well.
I can't remember if it was Ben or Kevin that said, "Hey, how come you can't do that?"
Well, but again, I would argue that she's trying to live as a human. So
because she doesn't want to give up her humanity.
She hasn't been exploring these abilities, so she hasn't practiced them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be like looking at a gymnast and saying, "Hey, how come you can't do tumbles and flips like that?" Well, I probably could if I'd spent years practicing.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll have a look in work. When I go into work tomorrow, I'll have a look, see if they've got household play spray. If they have, I'll get that. I'll use the bomb in the living room. And get the flea spray. Before I just kind of go around the rest of the house.
1, 2, 3. How many episodes are we doing today?
12. We've done 5 episodes so far, so we've got another like 6, I believe.
Okay.
6, 7, 8.
Was it?
Because there was a couple episodes that I wanted that I was looking at that.
Okay, no, it's 7, not 6. Miscounted. Yeah, you were saying?
there was a couple episodes that are coming up that I was hoping we were going to get a chance to touch on because I feel like they're directly relevant to some of the things we're talking about in this episode.
Which episodes would they be?
Specifically, it's not easy being Gwen, because we're going to get back to talking more about Natalie, and Gwen's relationship with her mother.
Yes, Not Easy Being Gwen is one of the episodes we'll be talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, so next episode, Revenge of the Swarm.
Revenge of the Swarm.
So this episode is directly calling back to the live-action movie that we watched.
Yeah, and it took me a minute or two to realize it, and honestly, I came to realize that in the course of this episode, it literally canonized every single element of that live-action movie, and confirmed, yep, that's absolutely meant to be considered canon.
Obviously, the Ben's car from that movie is he's been using that throughout Ultimate Alien, and also the Alien Transformation Nanomach, which he only got in that movie. He's been using that throughout Ultimate Alien as well.
Right.
So we've had those two specific references to that movie. They probably shouldn't have had that movie take place in between season 2 and 3.
Right.
Because more to do with the fact that they gave Ben a car and a transformation, and then had in a season where he didn't use them whatsoever, and then had him use them, and then in the following show.
Yeah, it did. It definitely seemed. I
think that was more of a production problem rather than anything else.
Yeah, and you could probably stretch your imagination to figure out a reason to make it work, because it can.
Yeah.
There's totally a reason for him not to be using his car for an extended length of time.
I like to think that he didn't have his driver's license during season 3 of Alien Force, and that's why he didn't use it.
I could buy that. Sure, that's a simple answer. Yeah. So I was going to ask you this because I was wondering it during the episode. Is the voice actor on Elena the same one that played her in the movie?
No, it's not the same. It's a different person.
I didn't think so, but I thought I'd.
It's also the same for Victor Validus.
Well,
it's also not the same actor there either.
Yeah, that one I caught right away.
In fact, you may even recognize the guy voicing Victor Validus. He's been in multiple episodes of Star Trek. Does that make it easier, or not really much?
Well, I guess I didn't pay much attention to his voice because I knew right off that it wasn't the same voice actor because, I know the actor that did him in live action. So let me see.
The actor's name is Brian George. He played Dr. Bashir's father in Deep Space Nine.
He was also in what's it called? The Orville. He played
he was.
The security officer's father. Or no, he was the scientist. He was on the Orville. I know that.
Yeah, he's also not a super prominent British actor, but he is a British actor, so his face is very familiar to me.
Yep.
Yeah, so so for this episode we have the obviously the microchips from the Alien Swarm movie return. Although in this instance, Elena herself is constructing them and studying them, and basically continuing what her father was doing with them. And they also make mention of the fact that that the queen in that movie was apparently a decoy queen, and the real queen was actually inside Elena.
Yep.
Now I don't know if if by saying that they mean that that was what was going on during the film, or if that was like sometime after the film. I'm not completely clear on that.
Yeah, and I don't think they intended to be clear on it. And what is kind of tragic is, from a certain point of view, there is no Elena anymore. It is just the
Yeah,
hive
the
queen,
nanoship
so to
queen.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can obviously near the end, you can see that the chips are kind of messing with her head.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know if this version of Elena, if if she'll be acting out of character, or if she's like in character with the way she was portrayed in the film. Well, I suppose you could excuse that by the fact that she's not really herself.
Exactly. There's elements of her personality are left, but one would argue it's not really her. But importantly, there's enough of her left for Ben to appeal to.
Yeah. And it's obviously, and it's also her obsession with him that then causes her to actually her to like Elena and then the Chip Queen to kind of have like a kind of inner conflict, because obviously Elena wants Ben, but like obviously she doesn't want to kill Ben. Also, she wants him to be
Right.
alive.
Right.
So when
There's a moment in this episode where she realizes that as Elena, she's not getting through to Ben. So she's when she's exposed as, this nano construct, she uses that knowledge to tempt Ben. I could literally be anyone you want me to be. And she turns into Julie for a moment, and then a bunch of other random female characters. And I'm like,
that's a
oh
later
God.
that's the second episode with the
Oh, was it?
swarm. Yeah,
Okay,
that didn't
I'm
happen in
sorry.
this
I am
episode.
getting a little bit ahead, but
She did tempt Ben with the whole being able to create stuff out of the chips, because she
true.
constructed
True.
like another version of his car out of the
The only
chips.
the only reason I wanted to touch on that though is because this would be the third time where you're starting to go, no, please don't turn into Gwen, please. you know.
Oh god.
Which they don't, to their credit,
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how many views a video will get if I take that bit out of context.
Well, yeah, I mean, what is that internet rule that for everything there's a well, never mind.
Yeah, I know what rule you're referring to.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, I think it is.
But anyway, the important point is that he is able to appeal to what's left of her humanity, what's left of Elena in it, and just convince her to.
And of course, you have throughout the episode where Elena is like sending basically a fake version of her father from the movie.
Yeah.
But obviously, at the time, Ben doesn't realize it's fake. He just thinks that the Victor Validus has like returned to the chip, or the chips have like returned to him, and he started going back to how he was in the film. And he doesn't realize that it's actually just an illusion created by the chips.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they also do mention that the chips are attacking Kevin and Gwen, but when Ben shows up, the chips they then flee.
Right. Because
Obviously,
they're trying to take out anything that opposes them, but part of their motivation is to preserve Ben. I actually, and I know this couldn't be intentional based on the fact that, this was from what, 2010 or something like that?
2011.
2011, yeah. This definitely predates, but it made me think of WandaVision. Very much the superpowered person who is trying to reconstruct, her lost life using her powers.
Yeah. I mean, at least in this instance, they're not trying to then portray the person who's like attacking and abusing people
Right.
for her own benefit. Then like try and portray her at the very end as like a selfless hero who sacrificed everything for them.
This literally is constructs. It's not like she's taken over somebody else and manipulating them.
Yeah.
She's less a villain than Wanda is.
Yeah. I mean, at least this episode doesn't go with the end that show did.
Yeah.
Or the message that show ended with, I should say.
Well, and mostly this has been what I've been seeing in Ben 10. The writers for Ben 10 really still do seem to understand heroism, whereas I think the Marvel writers have lost it.
Yep. And I also believe that the Ultimate Alien as a whole, or the later half of Ultimate Alien, does actually tackle some more like darker and more adult subjects.
Yeah, people do
without
get
going too
dead
extreme
by the end
with
of
it,
the
I should
season,
say.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
But Ben 10, the show, in all of its incarnations, has never really backed away from the idea of heroic individuals being willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good.
Yeah. Next episode, Creature from Beyond. And this episode is named after a H.P. Lovecraft short story, and also an 80s horror movie.
And thereby establishing a lot of Lovecraftian themes that we're going to see throughout the rest of the show, really.
Yeah. Although this episode itself has actually has a few other references to the Lovecraft story. Or maybe the movie more specifically, most likely, in the actual episode, other than just the title being the same. Because you have this creature, because you have a demonic creature coming from another dimension, and like attacking people, and then like feeding on the parietal lobe in the brain, which in the From Beyond movie from the 80s, that movie itself had a plot point where a person's parietal lobe kind of grows bigger through their brain and then extends out their forehead as like a third eye looking thing.
Right.
And
that's also
it's not exactly the same, but there's like some overlap there.
I'm pretty sure that the parietal lobe is referenced to in the Color Out of Space, which is another story about extra dimensional creature or entity or something seeping into our universe.
Wait, wasn't Color Out of Space the one about the a meteorite landing in a well and then infecting all of the land around the well?
Exactly.
And a family being like stuck in a house near that well, and then them being infected and mutating and
combining people together and
all sorts of like
livestock and whatnot.
Yeah, all sorts of body horror.
Well, you're not supposed to. It's very truly Lovecraftian. And I felt like this most recent Nicolas Cage version did probably the best job
Yeah.
of marrying the original Lovecraft novel with modern filmmaking. And if you do dig into the extraneous lore of Lovecraft, a lot of allusions there. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
helps that Nicolas Cage just looks crazy to
Yeah,
begin with.
exactly. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
No matter what role he's in, he always looks like he's
He is
crazy.
perfectly cast for a Lovecraftian film. That's for sure.
I'll be right
Yeah.
back.
Okay, but
Yeah. So this episode we have Forever Knights who have come across this seal that bears their logo on it.
yep.
That the knight who's there assumes it's containing like caches of alien weaponry and alien tech in general. So they have a laser drill and they've like started cutting into it, and this causes this thing to then be released from that seal, and it's called a lucubra or lucubra. It's spelled with two U's, but they don't actually. I don't think they actually pronounce it with both U's. I think it's one of those weird instances where the spelling and the pronunciation are different. Yeah, and this lucubra in like well, I don't know if you would say infect, but like it basically grabs hold of Gwen and implants. Well, I think I think it's later as well. They mentioned that it implanted something inside her brain, which then allows it to then control her. And of course, this episode is obviously setting up setting up the story going forward with the last like 20 episodes of the show.
Yep.
And of course, it also introduces a character called Old George, who at this point in time we don't really know much about him. We just know he's aware of what's going on to some extent because he has a small coin that has the Forever Knight logo on it, and he also he leaves the retirement home and he walks all the way to where this seal is, sees that it's cracked, and then he walks away to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's really much we can say about this episode
No, it really
without
does seem to be an establishing episode. It's setting up.
yeah,
It's really setting up the whole rest of the show.
yeah, the final arc of Ultimate Alien. So we can't really say much about this episode without like going into like plot details of the entire rest of of this show itself. Yeah, I did enjoy this episode. It's definitely not my favorite of the season. We're not quite at that episode yet. Okay, so next is basic training, which is I suppose the standard boot camp episode story, whatever you want to specifically say.
Give me just a second here.
I suppose a good comparison would be something like Stripes or Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not the only boot camp movies, but they're the first ones that jump to mind for me specifically.
My issue with it is that they had Gwen bunking with the guys.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
I mean, I understand for like plot reasons where they need to all be together and all this, so if Ben got in trouble, Gwen would get in trouble as well because she was with the group. But
Yeah.
still, it's like, why do they have a female bunking with the guys? And there was only 4 beds made up, if you noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
No more beds than they actually had characters for.
Yeah. Although we saw other beds like in the background, but like no one else was there in the bunk room with them. It was just the 4 characters we were introduced to at the beginning.
Right, and there was no bedding on those beds. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, their specific bunk room was basically empty until they got there. And this episode debuts another one of Ben's new aliens in Fast Track, who's very similar to Accelerate when you actually look at him and his like powers and everything.
True.
Because he's blue and black, he has super speed. Although Fast Track has a more humanoid proportions than Accelerate. And of course, Fast Track is one of the aliens we won't be seeing again once Ultimate Alien finishes. And also, once again, for the exact same reason, we're not going to see Jet Ray after Ultimate Alien.
Right. So I'm forgetting the character's name, but we encounter the drill sergeant that they're assigned to.
Yeah, this guy right here, Sergeant Holker.
Hulka, right. Hulka definitely comes off as a simplified version of Arlie Ermey's character from Full Metal Jacket.
Actually, Hulka, do you remember Stripes? The sergeant's name was Hulka.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Good catch.
The one that got blown up, sir.
Blown up, sir.
But he's the one who was like on top of the RV and all that when they were going into what was it, Germany or something?
Yeah, I think it was Germany. It's been a long time. I've got to rewatch Stripes now because I've not seen that movie in a very long time.
Well, when I get to S, that'll be one of the ones that I'll
absolutely.
be rewatching. But yeah, his name was Hulka. So it could have been just a nod to that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't get an Arlie Ermey vibe from this drill sergeant, or a watered down, child friendly version, I suppose.
It really had to be watered down because let's face it, they couldn't use the language that Arlie Ermey used.
I mean, there's an R-rated horror movie called Leviathan that features Arlie Ermey in a very similar role.
Oh, that's
although
true,
in that movie he actually is in a watered-down version of the same role. Weirdly enough, considering it's probably weirder that movie has a watered-down version, despite that being an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ben also befriends this blue alien named Tack.
Yep.
Which I'm now just realizing he's probably called that because he's blue and he can stretch. Yeah, Blue Tack.
Oh yeah. Makes sense.
I have no idea why I didn't notice that until now.
Well, these kinds of things aren't necessarily, obvious and in your face, so it's not until you revisit them that you realize it.
Yeah. And of course, he also does this thing where he stretches his head forward and puts his forehead on someone else's head, and as a greeting, and Ben calls it a slow headbutt.
Yeah.
And I like his reaction. Headbutt.
Yeah, he looks at Ben's head, then he looks down towards his butt, and he's like, head butt?
I do like that it also comes back into play later in the episode.
Yeah, because how does he put it? I'm greeting you in the a formal and reverential
yeah.
way or something like that.
But
Yeah.
it's like after they were talking about this being a slow head, I'm like, okay, that's gonna come up again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's like. Greet him in the formal setting.
Yeah,
It's like, oh,
yeah.
boom.
The I was thinking of it as the Chekhov's headbutt.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, throughout the episode, Ben, while they're all like going through the standard like boot camp process and everything, obviously Kevin, he's just like going through because like obviously he cares about keeping his plumber's badge because it has sentimental value to him. So he really cares about keeping it and actually being his. And obviously in this situation, Ben's not too concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Gwen, who's kind of in the middle, where she obviously cares about this, but she doesn't necessarily have sentimental value
Yeah.
to her plumber's badge.
Which does make the whole situation seem very reversed, right? Where you have Kevin being the responsible one, Ben being the one who just doesn't care, and Gwen being the kind of one in the middle, you know?
Yeah. And then we have Tack trying to do his best, but not doing as well. And also the whole reason he's here is because he was inspired by Ben
Right.
to join the plumbers.
There's a lot of simplification of storyline here that I thought again could use some nuance. He's commanded. The rule is he's not allowed to use his powers, right?
Yeah.
Which he completely ignores.
Which he completely ignores. And
Multiple times.
Right. For example, when they are on the range, the weapons range, right?
Yeah.
The little alien's cartridge goes underneath, a locker, and he turns into, I think it was forearms in order
it was
to lift
up.
To lift up the locker so the kid can get his cartridge back, and he gets in trouble for that. The argument could have been, well, I didn't use my powers on the range, I just did what I had to do for, It's the difference between using your abilities to get through an exercise and just a normal, everyday kind of situation.
Right, it's like, I was helping my team member. Are we not supposed to help our team members?
Yeah. Well, and that does kind of come back a little bit later when he does receive an award for
creative thinking.
Creative thinking and working
outside.
There was also
I think there was also something else written on there as well, but creative thinking in problem solving, I believe, was part of what it said.
And I definitely saw, although I think it's a bit of a stretch, it may not have been an intentional allusion, but it certainly made me think of Heartbreak Ridge, where Gunnery Sergeant Highway is constantly saying, what do Marines do? They overcome, they adapt, they think outside the box, right? And that's clearly what Ben is doing throughout this episode. He overcomes, he adapts. He doesn't follow the rules. He does whatever it takes to complete the mission and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have multiple instances of Ben using his power, or I think some instances where it probably would be justified for the drill sergeant to shout at him for using his powers, and then other times, like with the recovering the ammo clip from under all the stuff back here, and using
I feel like a situation like that, using your abilities to lift a locker to get something underneath it. I mean, that is such a mundane thing. That's almost like getting upset at somebody for, using the fact that he's a man to pee standing up. I mean, come on, you know?
Maybe it's like I think they mentioned it being like one of the rules of like the academy here is like not using any like superhuman powers. Maybe maybe he's like showing him every time he uses powers because he's like breaking that rule of like being there.
But I would see, this is where the nuance comes in, right? It's like, well, what
Yeah.
do you mean by superhuman powers? I mean, you know, does every alien have to not use their natural abilities because
Well, they're not human.
yeah, that's just it. You know,
Yeah.
that's, you know,
Yeah, because I mean, Tack has the ability to stretch himself.
right. Is he
We
not
don't see him
ever
stretch any
supposed to
other part of his body.
stretch?
We just see him stretch his neck. So if it's only his neck, or if he can stretch his whole body,
Right.
not really sure. We don't see enough of him to really get a clarification of
And would he
like
be
how
breaking
much.
the rules if, for example, he stretched his neck to see over a ridge or something like that? You know,
Yeah,
it's one of his natural abilities, just as surely as walking on two legs is a human ability.
yeah, yeah. And then there's also the instances of Ben using his powers where it may be considered a little more justified for him to lose points. Where I think it's the shootout, like
Yeah,
this mission right here where they're
right.
yeah, this here where the Alpha Squad has or taken a fake hostage and they have to
Right.
retrieve the hostage, and then well, when everyone else in the group either fails or is taken hostage or something, and Ben turns into Diamond Head and
Yeah.
runs up, takes everyone out, and then he like for some reason he like grabs a hostage or the fake hostage, throws that to the side, and then picks the guy up and throws him around.
So
Kill the hostage.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's what it comes down to is there's definitely a spirit of the rule here, right? The spirit of the rule is, what if you didn't have these abilities? What would you do? We're here trying to train you how to use these weapons, how to use, you know, very normal types of
Yeah.
skills, and you'll never develop those skills if you're
Yeah.
always relying on your Omnitrix. So
Yeah, and how to be a plumber and the basics of
exactly.
what plumbers require and everything.
So I totally get that, right? And there's been
Yeah.
times where, you know, I've been, you know, trained, you know, you could almost go back to school and go, we're trying to teach you how to do mathematics, so you're not allowed to use a calculator. Okay?
Yeah.
That is a perfect analogy, right? So I think it would have been better if they had kind of focused on that. But
Yeah.
again, this exercise where they're trying to where Alpha Squadron has, you know, an advantage and whatnot. Again, this leads me to believe that the writer on this episode was drawing from Heartbreak Ridge again.
Yep.
Because this was
Yeah.
very much that whole, you know, well, really helps to know when and where they're going to hit us, doesn't it? You know, that whole make the elite squadron look good because you follow the rules, but they don't have to, right?
Yeah. What happens when my men aren't prepared? They just get dead.
Right. You'll plant half those men tomorrow. And, you know, I do feel like what they did was they kind of watered down a storyline, and I feel like you kind of missed some of the nuance you could have had in the story there.
Yeah. I feel like the drill sergeant might have let like Ben and his team might have let him have the victory if Ben hadn't have just picked up the hostage and threw it to the side.
Yeah.
Because even though he broke the rules by using his powers, if he hadn't have thrown the hostage to the side, he probably still would have like won the actual won this.
Yeah.
Rather than technically failing twice for two different reasons.
So, I did point out that I felt like, the drill sergeant here very much came off like Arlie Ermey's character, Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, in Full Metal Jacket, but
Yeah.
I also
Oh,
think.
hello, it's Wolf 10 Media.
Oh, hey there.
Welcome, Wolfie.
Yeah, welcome. But I also definitely got the distinct impression that what's his name? What was the character from Heartbreak Ridge? The
Ayatollah
lieutenant,
Rockerola, that one.
the lieutenant character,
Oh, that one.
the one who was itching to go to war. Major Powers, Everett McGill's character, definitely also seemed to be kind of embodied here as well. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have you here for as long as you are able to be here, Wolfie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we also have in this episode, other than the like the Ben being trained, we also have like a subplot of the drill sergeant being, or attempted to be, someone attempting to assassinate him. Because you have when he's showing everyone how to like decouple a grenade from a glove and attacks the one who's demonstrating it first, and the grenade won't detach from the glove, and the drill sergeant like tries to get it off, and then Ben obviously turns into fast track and zooms them out of there before they explode. And then they start like theorizing like that was the grenade was. It's kind of convenient that the grenade was set to overload, and also the glove itself was set to keep the grenade on the hand.
Right.
It's kind of convenient that both those two things were set like that at the same time.
Exactly.
And then
So it's like
got
clearly
told for
someone's
saving their
trying to get
lives.
rid of Holker.
Yeah, it's like, and then again, Ben got in trouble for saving their lives. It's like, what, you wanted me to let you die?
Right.
Yeah. And that's another instance where he's like shouting at him for him using his powers. Yeah, and we also have I think the next instance of Holker almost like just avoiding, or narrowly avoiding being assassinated, is when his room is blown up or set on fire. I'm not sure which it is, because when they go up, when they first go to that room, it's already on fire. So I don't know if it was just set on fire or if it was actually blown up.
I got the impression it was blown up and the fire was the after effect from the explosion.
Yeah. Because then we have when they go through the rummage, they pick up a piece of I think it's the same type of grenade. So they theorize that whoever's doing this is using the same tech.
Yeah.
And also Holker points out that it's plummet standard issue equipment that's being used.
And it's like, okay, we know he's a hard drill sergeant, but really? Like, get over yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, and obviously as the episode goes on, we then do actually learn who it is that's trying to assassinate Holker, and it's a blue Tetramand. I think his name was it Core something? I forgot what his actual name was. But yeah, it's nice to know that there actually are different colors of Tetramand
Right.
Because all the Tetramans that we've seen so far have been red or a shade of red, and this Tetraman is bright blue. I don't know if there's an image of him. It does kind of make me curious how many varied colors Tetramans can actually be.
Right.
We also don't know why he's blue. It could be like a natural skin color, or it could be like a unique mutation exclusive to him.
Or he's sad.
Yeah, could be. It could be mood. He's a mood stone.
Although given that he's in the episode, he's angry, so I don't think that would make him blue. Wouldn't that make him red?
Yeah. Well, maybe for aliens it is. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe colors work different for aliens.
There you go.
Maybe they're colorblind. Maybe colorblind is a natural state for aliens. Yeah, so I'm also assuming that this blue Tetramand that is trying to assassinate Holger, I'm going to assume he's an adult Tetramand rather than younger. It does get a bit confusing because Ben turns into a 16-year-old Tetramand, but he's the same size as an adult, so it does make it a little confusing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Although they probably made this particular Tetraman, they probably made him blue to contrast with Ben when he turns into Forearms, because in this Forearms is red with some gold highlights.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably made this other Tetraman blue with some black in his design, and I think a little bit of red to kind of contrast with Ben when he turns into Forearms, maybe.
Oh, that could be.
Because I know when it comes to visual designs, most of the time it's not like an accident or coincidental the way a character looks or the way a character is designed.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you'll have minor errors like certain parts of a character's design being miscolored and maybe not quite drawn properly, but overall the general visual design of a character is normally like intentionally done a specific way. Is that about everything we have to say on this episode?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Okay, now we're on the episode they were talking about, the It's Not Easy Being Gwen.
Yes. I kind of had... I mean, I loved this episode. It was, in some ways, one of my favorite episodes of the season, but there were also some things that really kind of annoyed me about this episode.
Yeah. So, so this episode, obviously shows Gwen does a lot of stuff during her daily life.
Yeah, so on the one hand, okay, so the overarching story being she's an incredibly busy person trying to do so much in the course of the day. She's got a great heart, so she volunteers for a lot of things that she doesn't necessarily need to. But
Yeah.
I really feel like this episode paints Natalie, Gwen's mother, in a very, very negative light. Her characterization almost led me to believe there was something more going on with her that we would, see play out later, but we never do. It's not like Natalie is dealing with, I don't know, depression or being taken over by an alien or just being whatever. Yeah. She just comes off as a very delinquent mother,
I mean,
yeah.
My first issue was, Gwen said she would help with the stationery to get sent out. Her mom just gets up and leaves the house. It's like, why aren't you staying to help if this has to get out so
Yeah, this is so
quickly?
important to you that it get out in the next 24 hours. And it absolutely has to be done by hand. It can't be done in any other way.
But you have Ben and your
Yeah.
daughter who said she would help you.
Yeah.
She said help, not take over.
Right.
Funnily enough, that's a problem that I sometimes have with other people when I ask someone else to help me with something,
Yeah.
and instead of helping me, they just take over what I'm doing. And I'm like, I'm still want to do this. I just want you to give me a hand.
Right. Exactly.
Well, in this case, her mom didn't even give her a hand. She just simply abandoned her
And
to
walks
make her do
off.
it,
And then
you know.
constantly, where is it? Why isn't it done yet? Hey,
Yeah,
I'm helping. I'm not, completely responsible for this thing. So one of the things she does try to, okay, so I'm not allowed to print out other copies. I'm not allowed to use the computer, whatever. I have to do it all by hand. So what does she do? She tries to use her magic instead to write it out by, in
Yep.
quotes, hand. Which
the second time she does the whole Sorcerer's Apprentice thing,
exactly,
and it
Sorcerer's
doesn't work this time
Apprentice.
either.
Exactly.
Although for the first time we didn't actually see her do it, we just see her think about doing that, and then we see
Right.
an after effect of her doing it, and she's like, "No, don't ask about it."
Right.
Yeah, and so Gwen's waking up early in the morning to jog, learning French. She's what else was it?
She's
Obviously
going
doing
to-
the writing out the invitations by hand for her mother. Then she's doing I think she got a test during the day as well, and then she also has judo or karate or whatever, like a form of martial arts that she does.
Yeah, I think it
Where
was
we see
karate.
her do,
Yeah.
and she's also got to help out Ben and Kevin track down Dr. Animo and stop whatever he's trying to do.
And in a way,
Yeah.
it did kind of come off as how can I put this succinctly? It did seem to be a Gwen focused interpretation of the trope that we often see put on Ben, where there is this requirement to juggle personal life with the, in quote, save the world thing. And
Yeah.
honestly, I never felt like the characters in this show are, not only are they not being reasonable, but I don't think they're being realistic, right? So in this one, you have the example of Gwen's friend who is like, you're so busy saving the world, you never have time for me, right? And you see the
Yeah.
same thing with Ben and, ironically, Julie. Julie, well, you don't have time to come see me play tennis.
I'm saving the world. here,
Yeah,
babe.
it's like,
Yeah.
guys, do you get that? Yes, I understand you are important, but you realize the world that you live in is important. If I don't save it, you have nowhere to live. Okay?
Yeah, it's like, okay, on one hand, save the world. On the other hand, see your tennis match. I think I want to save the world so I can actually see it.
So that you will have a world in which to play tennis in. Okay? And it's kind of the same thing here. If I don't stop Dr. Animo, you're not going to have a recital to play at. Okay?
Yeah.
But I'm maybe getting a little ahead of myself in this particular episode because in a very interesting way, you do see her committing to, yeah, I'll be there. I'll definitely be there to see your recital or whatever. And
Yeah.
yet she gets caught up in having to help fight Dr. Animo. And I thought that they did an excellent job between playing the music and interspersing it with showing the battle going on literally outside, you know? She's
Yeah.
just outside of where the recital is going on.
Actually, I think the battle with Animo is in like an observatory,
Oh, maybe I was mistaken.
and
I'm sorry.
I don't know how close they are. Obviously, the episode frames it as once the music stops and the recital ends. We then see Gwen in the audience,
And,
but we
and
also hear the music end when Gwen and right as they defeat Doctor Animo. So it's not necessarily a case of the music ended and then the battle ended at the same time, and then Gwen somehow got to the recital really quickly. I think it's more of a case of the two events were probably happening at slightly different times, but for the sake of the story and the episode itself, they had overlaid them at the same time.
it does draw into question how quickly is she able to get to the recital from where the battle was taking place. And I even speculated to Nanette. I'm like, there's nothing that says she can't teleport. I mean, does she have that ability?
She
I don't
does.
know. I should imagine so.
No, she does. They brought it up in other
So
episodes.
could she not literally, okay, guys, you're on your own for cleanup, and then teleport to, the audience? We don't
Yeah,
see it happen, but that's entirely possibly what happened.
especially since I'm pretty sure Ben could handle Dr. Animo.
Right.
Maybe most of the time by himself, but maybe not always.
But what we do end up with is by the end of the thing, her friend finishes playing. She turns to the audience. She's definitely got that reserved, yeah, Gwen didn't make it. But she looks and there's Gwen. And there's Gwen all, bruised up and cut from the battle.
Yeah.
That should say a pretty darn huge thing. It's like I literally went through hell to get here.
I literally fought to get here for you.
Yeah.
Wolfie, I think I know what show you're referring to here.
This reminds me of a certain show where a certain overly self-righteous girlfriend dumped a certain half-alien boyfriend because he didn't show
Cookery?
for some cookery for
It's not a show I've actually watched, but I think I know what show he's referring to with this comment.
I have no clue.
Because I'm going to guess he's referring to Invincible. I don't know if that's what it... You can clarify if that is what you're referring to with these comments.
Yeah, never heard of it. I actually haven't watched regular television in well over a year. We just decided, nope, we don't want to do this anymore because we didn't want to pay cable prices.
Right.
Yeah, there are multiple shows coming out now that I'm just not even going to bother with.
Now, there is a service, it's called Philo. You might be able to get it out there too. It's spelled Philo.
Yeah.
And you can get different channels, cable channels. It's $20 a month.
Well, I don't know if Philo is something available outside the U.S., though.
Well, that's what I said. He might be able to get it there, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than cable, which our bill was getting up to, it's like at one point it was like $60, then it was $80, then it was $120. I'm like, no, I'm not paying this. I don't watch TV that much. So we cut the cord, as it were. Troy
Okay, yeah, he is referring to Invincible.
Yeah, and then I just watch the few shows I want to watch whenever they come up. So for $20 a month, that's worth it to me. And it's not cable, quote unquote.
So one thing I did want to touch on is the illusion of the title. It's not easy being Gwen. I think the obvious allusion is to Kermit the Frog. It's not easy being green. Which
that's actually listed in the Ben 10 wiki.
Oh, okay. But I would even go further. I do feel like the Ben 10 wiki does tend to go for the low-hanging fruit when it comes to allusions on the titles, because I feel like it's not just it's not easy being green. I think even the phrase "it's not easy being green" is beyond that a reference to a much older phrase. It's not easy being me.
Yeah. Did you hear? It's also not easy being cheesy.
It's not easy being cheesy. Yeah. That's the famous Cheetos commercial that has also worked its way into other aspects of pop culture.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, you could also draw on the Five for Fighting song. It's not easy
Yeah.
to be me, which kind of indirectly references Superman and is definitely used in the soundtrack for Smallville.
Yeah. There's also one thing in the Ben 10 wiki that I found. I don't know how valid this is because this isn't a show I've ever watched.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, this episode was or used an episode of House MD as a template.
Oh, really?
Now, that's not a show I've ever watched, so I don't have a clue if that's even a valid point or if that's just completely made up.
Without a reference to which specific episode they meant.
Yeah, no, the wiki doesn't mention what episode. It
That's-
just says an episode of House.
That's very difficult to evaluate. The only thing I can say about House MD is to keep in mind that House MD is in and of itself an allusion to Sherlock Holmes. Holmes House,
Yeah.
and the whole formula for the show being that House or Holmes uses has a Watson character, that he bounces ideas off
Yeah.
of and so forth, solving.
Well, there are
mysteries.
slightly different genres. House being a medical drama.
Right, and Holmes being a detective, but obviously deductive reasoning being an ongoing thing. I'm not sure though how they're
Yeah.
drawing the reference to Gwen here. So
I'm aware of what Melissa Harris is referring to here. Because the actor playing House is Hugh Laurie, who's British.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, in many things that I've enjoyed.
But the thing is, the way that
Like the
House
Mummy
practices
remakes are the
medicine,
only things
it
I
would
know him
never,
from.
Ever actually happen. No doctor practices medicine like that. You don't go into people's
No,
homes.
yeah.
You don't go to dangerous sites.
It is an incredible
for that.
stretch of credulity. You're absolutely right. But yeah, no, Hugh Laurie, Blackadder,
And he actually thinks that House MD is a comedy.
and I think he's right. From his perspective, I could totally see it that way.
Yeah.
He famously played a recurring role in the Blackadder comedies. He was the father character in Stuart Little.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yes, he was.
I completely blocked that movie out of my memory.
I can understand why, but yeah.
I thought it was cute.
Now that you've reminded me that movie exists, now I just remembered that movie had a sequel.
Yep. And
Let's end this conversation before I remember more about that.
almost certainly, yeah. It must be traumatic for you because you keep blocking it from your memory. But yeah, getting back to Gwen, honestly, there was a lot of times where she honestly should have. And it makes you think that maybe she's putting so much pressure on herself. The pressure's building. She's going to flip out one of these days. But the fact that she didn't say to her mother, what do you want from me?
There was one previous episode where she got so ticked off, she just went full anodyne, and it was like pinned the guy up against a tree, and it was like basically, you move, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think he might have peed himself a little there.
And rightly so. And honestly, that is, although I don't think it ever plays itself out in the span of this series. No, actually, I'm sorry. I take that back. We do get a little bit of that later. We'll come back to this, but Kevin and Gwen and later Ben have these temptations with power, right?
Yeah.
Where they're struggling to keep their humanity and not be tempted by ultimate power, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish they'd almost touched on that a little bit more here. They certainly could have, but there's also raising the pressure unnecessarily. She really does miss the opportunity to release the pressure a little bit by addressing things in her life. Like, Mom, I'm here to help you. I'm willing to help you, but I'm not willing to do it all for you. I can't do it all. You know, if you're the one who's going to set these standards, then you have to be prepared to be a part of the solution. I'm not just going to do these for you. If you won't let me take any shortcuts, then you better sit down and write them out by hand with me. Or you're on your own, Mom.
Yeah, it's like I would never expect Troy to do something I wasn't willing to do myself.
Right.
If I asked for his help in something, I'm expecting us to work together.
Exactly. You know? Are you saying that I was being a little bit like Gwen by doing your intro for the video yesterday? Is that what you were suggesting?
I mean, I asked if it was something that could be done, and you said you had other things to do, so I was like, well, do the other things. I even told you, don't even bother with it. It was just something I came up with. It wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
Do what you needed to do, because that was important.
Yeah, so those of you that were following the behind-the-scenes struggle, I guess I kind of was getting like Gwen, where I had a lot of responsibilities that I had to address yesterday. And so when Nanette asked me to do an intro for her rewatch last night, I did get a little bit like Gwen, like, okay, and add that to the pile. But in fairness to myself, you know, I chose to do this thing, and
even after I told him he didn't have to.
Yes, but that wasn't my point. What I was getting at was there was a little bit of a selfishness to it, because I had pointed out I am working on doing an intro video for my own live streams. By doing one for Nanette that had a much shorter, you know, time frame, I had to get it done that day. It became like proof of concept for myself, so that I can now take the time to apply the skills that I learned there to something else that's way more in depth than you needed for this particular episode. But we are focusing on a character developing thing for Gwen. So even though I felt like there are elements of story that they missed out on, it certainly lays the seeds for future character development for Gwen, which indirectly I think do play out later on in the season.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Is that about everything we have on this episode?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We'll certainly probably come back to this episode later in the season too.
Yeah.
To touch on some of those, laid seeds that I referred to there.
Okay, here we go. Now we're at my favorite episode of the season.
It is a good episode, yeah.
Being Ben 10,000 Returns.
Yep.
Mostly due to the fact that this version of Ben's future is probably my favorite of the three that so far we've only been shown one in the original series, one for Ultimate Alien, and then one for Omniverse, but we haven't got to Omniverse yet, so we haven't seen that one, but so far this is my favorite version of Ben's future.
We also, in this episode, we deal with a little bit of time travel. Again, I don't feel they used it to its full potential or touched on all of the plot threads I felt they should have, but it was very clear that the writers were very mindful of elements of time travel here, and did make an attempt to address them. Is this the same Ben 10,000? No, not exactly, but there are elements there, and they even acknowledge that, and they acknowledge why things are different, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So this episode kind of acts as a somewhat of a connection to the Race Against Time movie.
It absolutely does,
because we've already had the episode connecting to Alien Swarm. Now I've got an episode in the same season connecting to Race Against Time.
And But unlike that kind of canonizes the live action movie whole cloth, this one sort of retcons it in
Yeah,
several ways.
this one reinforces the idea that the Race Against Time movie is out of continuity.
Right.
Because they specifically say that the events of that movie happened in a different universe. They even show the versions of Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max from that film, obviously in animated form rather than in live action. And they make reference to the events of that movie multiple times, or in the context of it being a separate timeline or universe.
But most importantly, it kind of not kind of. It actually does retcon the origin of Eon, right?
Yep. And it makes his backstory basically what you suggested his backstory should have been.
Right. Oops. Sorry, I just disconnected myself, so I can't hear you for the moment. But yeah, it definitely. I didn't realize it at the time that I saw the live action film, right? But it was very clear that they had laid the seeds for a much better origin story, and it seems that the writers saw that too, and played off of that because, well, let's just kind of jump to the chase, right? It turns out the big twist at the end is that Eon is actually an alternate future version of Ben. Which they sort of seem to imply in the live action film, but not really. And I was like, it would just be simpler if it was, a future version of Ben, and that retcon actually does come to pass. So, yeah.
And like I said before, that movie gave us the Master. Now we have the Doctor.
Right.
Are we doing Doctor Who?
Kind of, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Where's Missy come in?
well, yeah, but you're right. So what we end up having is this villain who his minions. The big reveal comes by finding out that his minions are really just alternate universe versions of Ben that he has captured, and instead of destroying, he's just turned them into his own minions.
Yeah, and absorb the power from them.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what he specifically does. He phrases it like he phrases it as that he's absorbed them and used them to power himself.
Very
I think
much
is how he says it.
Similar to the Anti-Monitor in DC Comics' Crisis on Infinite Earths. That whole trope.
Yeah.
But we also see that there are many similarities between this Ben 10,000 and the previous Ben 10,000. This one has the memories of those events because, his history took a similar course, had similar events as a child that led up to, but he's not the exact same because he's taken a different course in his life.
Yeah.
Having learned certain lessons. And it almost implies that there will be yet another Ben 10,000 that our Ben will eventually become, that will not be this.
Yeah, because in this episode they refer to this Ben 10,000 as his real future, but because obviously that version of Ben 10,000 has been brought back into the past and interacted with his 16-year-old self.
Right.
And also this Ben 10,000 is the future of this current version of Ben who has the Ultimatrix.
Right.
And considering at the start, at the end of Ultimate Alien, Ben will no longer have the Ultimatrix, and he'll then be using the official Omnitrix. That means this future is now more than likely not going to happen either, or isn't going to be like the primary future.
What is encouraging is an implication here. You see a progression that the previous Ben 10,000 was kind of a jerk. This one, little arrogant, but a much better person because he's learned something from the previous events. And I'd like to believe that, as we all also, as you just pointed out, this specific Ben 10,000 is not going to come to pass. A different version will, maybe an even better one. It's like he's refining himself. He's taking advantage of what he learns from future versions of himself to make himself a better person going forward.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the way this future Ben's powers work?
Very interesting. There's an illusion that he would eventually get access to the master control, but sorry, can't reveal that. That'll come in time, right?
Yeah.
Also, going back to something that I kind of alluded to earlier, he does use some spell casting abilities that he learned from Gwen.
Yeah, and he even mentions about like you hang around Anodite 20 years, you pick up some tricks.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is,
So that's obviously I don't think it's just him learning that from Gwen, but I think it's because he's also related to Verdona. So he technically has Anodite DNA in him as well, but it just
Right.
didn't manifest in any kind of powers. I think that's probably a case of him being able to do that because he has Anodite DNA in him.
Possibly.
You know, or he has that like potential to be able to do that. So maybe that's made it, I suppose, a little easier for him to be able to learn that.
what gets me is that, older Ben says, I've added a couple new aliens for you, but you never see them because we watched all the way through all this and we never see any new aliens. So sorry, spoiler, but it's like, when are we going to see these ones that older Ben made them?
Wait, hold on.
I don't know, because I end up losing track of. I know that
There's at least
there are
3
people that
aliens we see later on that I
Mhm.
think what the Ben 10,000 is referring to. So we have
Ones that were used before.
Eatle, Jury Rig, Clockwork. Those are 3 aliens that Ben uses later on that I think are some of the aliens that he added.
Oh, yeah, there's that little guy. It's that Jury Rig?
Yeah, the little red guy is Jury Rig.
Yeah.
He's so adorable.
Yeah, some of those aliens we'll see versions of in Omniverse, or
Ah.
minor redesigns of, I suppose I could say. Yeah, there is also an alien that Ben uses in the Ben 10 Generator X crossover, or one that he unlocks for the first time in that crossover, that he then uses in Omniverse, or that we then see in Omniverse.
Mm-hmm.
But considering we're not watching Generator X, we don't really have to worry about that. Yeah, so in this future, also Eon has these like time beams that he fires to basically erase things to dust.
Yeah, that was pretty
And
Yeah.
he even hits a couple of Ben's aliens and just erases them. Because when Wen's turned into Waybig, and Eon blasts Waybig, and then we see Waybig just crumble away into dust. And we just see Ben emerge out of the pile of dust on the floor.
Right.
And then the sage advice, don't let him hit you.
You think?
Yeah, and then we even have when Eon erases Swamp Fire, or both his ultimate form and the regular Swamp Fire, and he then tries to erase Ben himself, and Ben 10,000 like creates a wall of diamonds. He's like, take your best shot. Diamond doesn't particularly age.
Yeah, that
Right.
was a good one.
Which makes me think, why didn't Ben just turn into Diamond Head? Then he would be immune to the blast.
Right.
Because Diamond Head is made of diamonds. So by
I don't-
that logic, Diamond Head should be perfectly fine to fight against Eon.
I'm not sure if we touched on this before, but the future version of Ben, when he makes his changes, he doesn't physically change his body, except for maybe like size.
Yeah, like Ultimate
he
Humongousaur will grow bigger.
Yeah, he maintains his Ben appearance and just takes
Yeah,
on
and
the
you utilizes
qualities
the
of
powers
those.
of those aliens
Yeah.
rather than actually turning into them.
just not that it really matters. I don't think it really changes the outcome of what
Yeah.
he can do. It almost seems like a bit of vanity on his part.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a take it or leave it kind of
Yeah.
change. You either like that or you don't like it.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the show is that Ben can transform into aliens that look very different from him. So the fact that his future self doesn't have that, but instead uses the powers of those different aliens.
Yeah.
I know some people can find that as being like a bad thing, but
I did, like I
don't
said,
know.
I did take it to be a sort of a vanity thing. It could also just be a shorthand kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they dug into it too much, and they're not consistent with his transformations, but it could almost be too,
Yeah.
well, it's less transformation I have to go through. Let's just get on with it, you know?
Yeah. And when Ben 10,000 uses Jet Ray, he's basically Superman because he
No,
can
that's
fly,
true.
he can shoot heat vision out of his eyes.
That's true.
He has some level of superhuman strength. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's naturally Jet Ray's strength or if that's like an additional strength from, let's say, a different alien, maybe. They don't make it too clear on that.
The other thing, and again, this is focusing too much on what
Yeah, I
ifs.
can see this comparison that Wolf 10 Media is bringing up.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah, I can see the whole
But
Vixen comparison.
the other, maybe I'm reading a little too much into this, but there's also the possibility that by not changing his appearance, by always appearing like Ben Tennyson, it could be very much that whole Superman concept of I don't wear a mask, I don't look different, I want people to see me so they can trust me, you know, and it could just be a natural outgrowth of, you know, the J. Jonah Jameson type of character who's always making it look like he's a freak alien. Well, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a superhero. I have powers. I'm here to help. This is my face. This is who I am. You can trust me, you know? Yeah, they definitely draw a lot of inspiration from DC Comics. You're absolutely right. Or the
Yeah.
writers do.
I want to say Eon, or this design of Eon looks like a DC villain.
Kinda.
Maybe Dr. Polaris. Obviously without the very weird, obviously without the big U-shaped helmet.
Right.
I think it's got roughly the same colors. Yeah, and I know Eon makes some appearances in Omniverse. I don't know if it's the exact same version of Eon, but he does make some reappearances there.
As far as Ben not changing his appearance, I think it's just more of a, it's not necessary, why do it?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
another thing that I did want to bring up, especially since you're talking about references or inspiration drawn from DC Comics, really got a strong hyper time type of feel from this from the way they're talking about timelines and alternate histories and futures and stuff like that.
Is that the first Kingdom Come story, or was that the follow-up?
That's about where it was introduced. Yeah, was Kingdom Come.
Yeah, because I know that was at that point the multiverse wasn't around. It was just one Earth, and
But
it was before they reintroduced the multiverse.
It absolutely was a way of kind of finagling a multiverse when they didn't want to deal with a multiverse. Yes.
Yeah, and then Infinite Crisis brought the multiverse back.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's how they describe like the connection with the previous Ben 10,000, and like in relation to the current one that they're with.
Yeah.
And we also have this is where they mention about the Hands of Armageddon existing in every universe,
right,
every timeline, I think it was.
Right, and
Yeah,
you did reference earlier that Gwen, when she touches or she scans or does her magic mumbo jumbo on, on the hand, um, she sees the past events from the movie, as you said,
yeah,
in an animated way, and it's like, yeah, I don't
yeah.
remember that. Well, that's basically getting across that, yeah, this was the events of that live action episode were an alternate, timeline.
You're referring to Elena Wolfie. That would be 2 episodes that she's in, because it's Revenge of the Swarm, and then it's
Right.
another episode later on in the show. No, wait, I think there is a character design for Elena in Omniverse. I don't know if she actually appears in that show, but there is a design for her in that. Yeah, oh, what was I going to say? I was going to say something before I pointed out Wolf 10's comment then. Oh yeah, that's it. When Gwen touches the hands-on again, it summons time ninjas.
Time ninjas, yeah.
Obviously, we later learn that they're actually mind-controlled 16-year-old Bens.
Right.
Weird that there are no variations, no 10-year-old Bens, no 20-year-old Bens, no 30-year-old Bens,
Yeah.
all 16-year-old Bens, with
Yeah.
Eon being the
I would say
30th,
that's another
30-ish age.
artifact of the fact that they just don't want to change the
animation.
visual animation model. Yeah.
Okay, Wolfer, are you asking which of those two I think is a better fit for Ben, or do you just want to know which one I would rather see with Ben?
Personally, I would say Eunice, but that's just me.
Yeah. Should we fill in Wolfie on the some of the details of that, or should we just leave Wolfie to figure that
Well,
out for
yeah,
himself?
we were talking about Alana from a previous episode just a few back, and it might have been before you joined us this morning, so you might want to catch that on the rewatch. But we've already established that Elena is no more. There is really no Elena anymore. She is just.
No, I meant the thing with Eunice.
Oh yeah,
What
yeah,
we
yeah.
talked about with Eunice, so we
There's also
fill that
there's
in.
also the ongoing not directly touched on, but by many fans skeevishly implied concept of a Gwen Ben ickiness.
You know what, Wolftan, go back into an earlier point in the stream and you'll get a better idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah. That is obliquely touched on at least 3 times this season.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I'd probably, with this, I would probably myself, I would say probably Julie might be a better fit with Ben, but that's more to do with the fact that we've actually seen Ben and Julie together more often throughout the show. And Elena was only she never really properly had a relationship with Ben. It was more of implied in the movie, and then in the Revenge of the Swarm episode, it was kind of not so much a relationship, but more of an obsession.
Yeah,
there was probably a side effect of her
definitely
being
a
possessed
fatal
by the
attraction
chicks.
kind of thing. Plus, I never really got the distinct impression that Ben had feelings for her beyond friendship.
Yeah.
I felt like he felt a definite friendship and maybe even a certain amount of guilty obligation to her.
Yeah. I've also just realized there's something that's missing from this future version of Ben.
Mm-hmm.
His son, Ken.
Doesn't mean he doesn't exist. He's just
Yeah,
not referenced.
nowhere to be seen.
There was a lot going on here, so I mean, you can kind
Yeah.
of, you know. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility to believe that, yeah, he's still out there. They just didn't reference him. But if they had
Yeah.
touched on that, then, you know, I think this would be a second reference to him. And then you'd kind of want to know, well, who's the mother? Maybe they just didn't want to deal with any of that.
Yeah. Even though we technically already know who the mother is.
True. Or would be.
Yeah, or would be. I mean, given that no, actually, in the original series, Ken's mother isn't directly stated, but in like pop-ups for the episode, clarify who the mother is.
Right.
And then later in Omniverse, they'll actually go forward with the idea of like actually, like concretely saying who Ken's mother is.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Ken doesn't appear here, so we don't know.
Yep.
So there's, I suppose you could say two of the same or similar versions of Ben's son with the same mother. You could say it's two, or you could say it's one and then another one that's kind of clarifying, but not really.
And the other thing, too, is if they did focus on Ken and make reference to his mother, it really doesn't fit well with what's going on currently in the storyline for Ben. Because I mean, we're dancing around it. Let's just say it. The original idea was that Ken's mother was going to be Kai, and when was the last time we saw Kai? He hasn't had any relationship with her for a long, long time.
Yeah. That'll be the season 3 episode. Obviously, they in the actual original series they made that like not long after. Like obviously this is an instance where in universe time and out of universe time when they're actually making the show is different.
Yeah.
So obviously in universe, Ben's not seen her in like by now it'll be years. But when they made the episode where they introduced Ken, technically Ben hadn't have seen her in months, and obviously the 20 or 30-year jump, anything could have happened in that point in time, especially with that being an alternate
and it
future.
Still could. I mean, the reality is, you know.
Yeah, but the intentions with the original series, or specifically what they bring up with the pop-up trivia information, they do mention Kai as being his mother.
Yeah.
So clearly they had that intention when they were making the original series.
But
and it's more just onto the later shows to either go with that or not to go with that.
But
I think it depends on who. I think it depends on the later people making the show, whether they like or don't like that idea.
True. And a very possible, potentially dark implication here is that, you know, this different history did not lead to him having a relationship with Kai, and therefore there is no Ken.
Yeah. Although I think the reason Omniverse did have Ken and also Kai, I think the reason that show did that is because the people working on that show had more of a preference for the original show rather than Alien Force and Ultimate Alien.
Could be.
That might be why Omniverse went with that. Or there could be a completely different reason.
Yeah.
I think some of the same people who worked on the original series were working on Omniverse as well. I don't know how many of the same people were working on both shows. Melissa Harris, Julie is the Asian American, and Kai is the one who's Native American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to clarify. Okay, yeah. Is that about everything we have to say on this episode?
Yep, I think so.
Now I'm curious, is this next episode one that you like as well?
The next one, the
Moonstruck.
yeah,
The one that
did.
focuses on young Grandpa Max.
Right, and it does show us the story that was implied previously of his meeting with Verdona, or at least his initial meeting with Verdona. It also gives us the background on how he came to be one of the plumbers. How it had been mentioned previously that he'd been up for the to be an astronaut.
Yeah, but then he didn't. But then he also mentioned that he never said that he didn't go to the moon. He just didn't go to the moon with NASA.
Right. Which of course is also preserving the real world history of the moonshot. You know, he wasn't on that original Apollo mission, so otherwise it would have been an alternate history.
Yeah. So what I've written in my notes for this one is obviously this is a Grandpa Max focused episode.
Right.
So this is probably the closest we're going to get to a Grandpa Max spin-off.
Right.
And also It's Not Easy Being Gwen is also is also a kind of a case of that's probably the closest we're going to get to a Gwen spin-off. Yeah, so for this, I've specifically pointed out that this episode kind of has a Green Lantern crossed with Terminator type of vibe to it.
Definitely a T2 type of thing. The whole foundry with the molten metal and everything. Yeah.
We were thinking the same thing when we watched it. It's like, what is this, Terminator?
Yeah. And I specifically noticed the Green Lantern comparison because Grandpa Max, he starts out as a pilot. He finds a crashed alien ship with an alien inside it that has the power to create hard-like constructs. And what else was it?
We do also get an implication that because when I think we've commented on this before, the whole concept of the plumbers, when it originally started out, it seemed as though it was an Earth-based, Men in Black kind of thing, and then it was later morphed to no, it's an intergalactic group, and there just happens to be human members of it. And here in this episode, we get not exactly a resolution of that, but it does seem to enrich that particular bit of lore that the Kennedy administration was aware of aliens and they were beginning their own, Men in Black type ops, that Grandpa Max was being inducted into when he was reached out to become a plumber.
Now, I do know that Omniverse will actually touch more on the whole two different versions of the plumbers. The Men in Black one and then the Space Police version.
Okay.
And what was great
I don't quite remember how much they touched on that, whether they give it like a proper resolution or if they just touch on it more. But I do recall that they do that show does kind of touch on that.
Yeah.
Like the whole difference a bit more.
What was nice too is that, you see Grandpa Max with, this robot alien thing coming after him, and then finds out Verdona's an alien, and it doesn't faze him in the least. He doesn't freak out or anything. He's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is new.
Which, again, kind of has that whole Men in Black kind of thing, just like with Will Smith's character, who just thinks differently, and takes certain things in stride that would freak other people out. There's also a certain realism to it. It's like once you've encountered aliens and robots and stuff, find out someone else happens to be an alien. Okay, well, I guess this shouldn't be too big a shock, right?
Yeah. And you have the the T1000 stand in this synthozoid, I think they call it,
Yeah.
or synthoid, or whatever specific word they use. It does kind of have a Jack Kirby design,
Yes.
or Jack Kirby inspired design to it. I don't know if that's just me, or if that's like, or if it actually is, because I couldn't find anywhere about it directly being based on like a Jack Kirby design. But when I look at this, I can kind of see that influence on it.
One thing I did notice, and it's something that I caught and really appreciated, was that the design of his car, the artist who did the drawing of the car, paid great attention to getting the details of a 57 Chevy Bel Air convertible correct. And the only reason that I know it was a convertible was because of the placement of the rearview mirror. So it's like, wow, that is some, hard dive on detail. That was a car guy who drew that. But that also made it very, very challenging for me when he's, having the chase scene and dinging up the car. And I'm like, oh, no. Even though it's a cartoon Chevy, I'm like, no.
I think this is the best image I could be able to find. It's this like small little bit of the car right here.
Yeah. Yep. But there you go. The
And then here's the 10-year-old Grandpa Max from the original series.
That's wild.
That episode, that episode where Grandpa Max got covered in water from the Fountain of Youth when he turned 10.
Yeah.
Now see where Troy saw one car, when I saw that was red with that kind of white swoop on the side, my first thought was the Gran Torino from Starsky and Hutch.
Oh yeah. But no, it was definitely.
I'm obviously not a car person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, when I hear Starsky and Hutch, all I think of is like a PS2 game that I remember playing. I don't remember anything about like anything else related to that other than that. In fact, I don't think I even have that PS2 game.
It was one of those like 70s cop shows, undercover detectives. They're of course friends with a bar owner, and often enlisting his help in getting information or whatever. It's like, because everyone's got a bartender friend who can get information from like the black market and stuff. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also have this is the second time this season that we've seen Verdona. Because previously we saw her in the episode with Cousin Sunny, because Verdona appeared, or Gwen called Verdona, and she came and collected Sunny and Antonia and took them back to where they belong. And then this is the second time we're seeing Verdona. Obviously a younger version of her, where she first meets Grandpa Max. Now, I seem to distinctly remember, Troy, you didn't like Verdona when you first saw her in the
she's definitely
season
a
1
very
of Alien
different
Force, I think it
character
was.
Here. Yeah, she's definitely a very different character here, and I don't know what it is. She
got better.
Yeah, no, or it could be the other way around. She starts out as a much more likable, sympathetic character who kind of loses touch with humanity. I don't know. It's a little strange. It's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But they've definitely refined her character significantly more here. One little detail, and it's an easy thing to miss that I picked up on.
Yeah.
Because they're going with the whole 50s vibe here, there's the scene where Verdona is captured and she's put into a cell of some kind, and it makes a sound. They reuse the sound effect from War of the Worlds, and I'm like,
did you notice the colorful lights as well?
Very clearly meant to be that whole 50s aesthetic.
Yeah, the Ben 10 Wiki points out that they that those lights are like a reference to the 50s War of the Worlds movie,
That makes
like the
sense.
tripods, ships, and everything.
That certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
In fact,
I
you
mean,
could even
given
almost
this,
look at the robot as being like the robot from The Day the Earth Stood Still.
oh, Gort, is that it?
Gort, I think was his name. Yeah.
Yeah, he had like a slit for an eye, didn't he?
Right. I
Yeah, just
also
like
thought,
one uniform like appearance with like a little slit for his eye
yeah.
or eyes or however many eyes he had.
I also thought that perhaps the power suppressing bracelet, which was the MacGuffin for the whole episode, I
Yeah.
thought that was going to play in later in the season. Like at some point they were going to have to bind Gwen's powers or something, but it never does come up. Oh well.
Yeah. I think it was just meant as like a catalyst for Grandpa Max to tell like the story of like how he met Verdona, and also explain why that bracelet has such a sentimental value to him.
Sure.
And of course, when he looks
Yeah, I mean,
up into the sky before telling a story, you can almost hear the.
Yeah.
Tell the story.
The other thing too is you mentioned, how wistfully we would love to see a 1950s era spin-off of Grandpa Max. I could totally see a storyline where he's a plumber and Verdona is a supporting character, and whenever they try to have like a normal life together, she puts on that bracelet, and it's kind of that whole bewitched, don't use your powers kind of thing, so that we can have a normal life. That would be a great little, story element.
Yeah. And considering that this episode had was set in the 50s and had like a very 50s sci-fi
right
theme to it going through, it's obvious I'm going to end up liking it because I like 50s sci-fi in general. So
absolutely.
Although this still isn't like my favorite over the Ben 10,000 Returns episode. That one is still my favorite.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. Oh, I also point in my notes that young Grandpa Max kind of resembles Captain Atom.
Oh yeah. I can kind of see
the
that.
human version, not when
Sure.
he's like in the metal skin and everything.
Right.
Yeah, and we also have the robots using Verdona, or intends to use her as a battery to power his species. And then obviously we have a small moment where Grandpa Max says that no, I think it's the robot says that I think it's something like is one life worth an entire species or something like that. And Grandpa Max says that points out the fact that like they're robots, they don't have emotions, and they don't understand that, and that Verdona's like an actual living being. So there is like somewhat of I suppose I don't know if you would consider that like the most morally complicated part of the episode. Obviously, it obviously doesn't go as far as like an episode of Star Trek would.
Right.
Obviously, because this is for children, and that's a show for like families overall.
Right, and it again, it does pick at. I kind of wish we got the spin-off so we could explore these a little bit more, but it does lay the seed for what is the moral compass for a human plumber, right? Am I anti-alien protecting the earth? Is execution appropriate, or am I a hero trying to save regardless of race? I mean, these are all really interesting things that they could explore in a series like that, but Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that.
Yeah, especially since this came out like 10, possibly more than 10 years ago by now.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Cartoon Network have not returned to anything from the classic or what is referred to as the classic series, that being the original show, Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and Omniverse. Well, I suppose you could consider that the classic timeline or classic continuity, whichever you would prefer to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, in this episode, near the end of the episode, we see Magister Laprid again. Because he's the plumber that we first met at the start of Alien Force.
That's right.
The one who initially encouraged Ben and Gwen to actually start being plumbers and and also died helping them.
Right.
Probably makes sense that he reappeared earlier in the timeline before dying. Because they'll probably, if they made him reappear after he'd already died, they'll probably have to find some way to explain how he's alive again.
True.
So it just makes more sense to just make him reappear at a point where it makes perfect sense he would still be alive.
Yep.
And wasn't his the first death we saw in Ben 10? And they were just he's gone.
Yeah, it may have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Magister Labrat was the first character to die in this series, or on-screen die.
Yeah, because these people get blown up all the time and they don't die.
Yeah, along with a couple Forever Knights, they also got blown up as well.
That's funny. Some of these things I'll look at going, okay, he should have a broken neck, he should have a broken neck. He just got blown up, he should have no bits left at all. You're like, how are they surviving that,
Oh yeah, and we have this Synthozoid. Obviously, the Terminator 2 comparison makes more sense. Not just the Foundry part, but also the fact that he can repair himself.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not made of liquid metal, but he does do a similar thing where he can just reattach his arm, or broken parts of him he can just repair them with no real trouble and just keep going.
It's like, oh, come on.
Right.
How am I supposed to kill this thing if it can repair itself?
Is that about everything we have for this episode?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. Final episode. Prisoner number 775 is missing.
I think, without a doubt, this is my least favorite episode in all of Ben 10.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to let you go deeper into the how and the why of that, because
Okay.
I'm kind of curious why.
Okay, so one of the things that we have held Ben 10 up for is how these writers are writing good characters, good heroes, moral lessons, in this age of SJW Wokosos, right? We are actually talking about a series that is a bit more pure, a bit more, reassuring. This episode drifts well into the preachy SJW. Okay, written by Peter David, who until this episode I used to be a very big fan of.
Actually, he's written a few previous episodes of the show before this episode.
True, he has. And he has written some Star Trek novels. He has written for Marvel Comics. I always found his writing to be very humorous, very, what would you say? He knows his subject matter. So it's not like, well, he doesn't know what he's writing. He really does his research. But this episode was clearly meant to be preachy. And it I mean, if it was very on the nose about, especially given it was done in 2011, he was preaching about Guantanamo Bay, and it's like, you know what, F you, just F you.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I'll tell you what, just as a side note about this led me to doing a little looking into Peter David. I ended up going to his personal webpage, and back in October he was doing a minute for minute commentary on the presidential debate. And I just real quick wanted to read. He's at 9:05. He says, and literally, the first sentence out of his mouth is a lie. The estimated 2 million who were going to die was if the government did absolutely nothing. The vaccine is not coming and not ready. It's all BS. And I'm sitting here going, that was less than 6 months ago. That comment didn't age very well, did it?
Yeah.
But of course, he's turned off comments, so no one can even point that out to him. So
Yeah,
I'm like, you know what? I am
yes.
done with Peter David. He can go rend and torture himself anally for all I care.
You know
But
what?
yes,
I didn't
let's-
need that mental image.
Yeah, we'll bring it back to this episode, though. Yeah, I have absolutely no stomach for this. The whole idea is that the government has set up a prison similar to Guantanamo Bay, but instead of it being for terrorist criminals, okay, it is
Yeah, it's for aliens that have come down to
it
Earth.
is for, and in this case, an innocent alien who did nothing other than happen to be an alien. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Poor analogy, poor storytelling. There, said my piece.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't have any of the like the political and the background stuff or anything like that this episode is like referencing or like copying or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I don't have any of that context.
Yeah.
I just have like this episode and then any information that's been given in this episode only. So the only context of like the story of this episode, the only context I have is the episode itself and nothing externally. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't mind this episode. It's certainly not my favorite, but I didn't mind it necessarily either.
Yeah.
Because I obviously saw the whole like the immorality of the them of like I don't think they even mentioned it being the U.S. government, but like rather
It was Area 51.
yeah, underneath Area 51.
Yeah, so it's absolutely the U.S. government.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just in the episode they don't directly say the U.S. government.
Well, yeah, they don't say it, but it's
Yeah.
absolutely implied.
And they
Yeah,
wanted to take
yeah, so,
the aliens because Ben came back out and he said they're starving.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really
Yeah, and
blatant. Yeah.
Yeah, and he even says that the conditions are inhuman, and then the general is like, well, they're not human.
And from a technical standpoint, it is true,
Yeah, I mean, they're not human, but doesn't necessarily mean you should treat them horribly either.
No, and that's exactly my point. It really is depicting, and again, they're basically depicting the U.S. government as evil for evil's sake. Evil military, evil U.S.,
Yeah.
It's like, guys, okay, we get it. You hate the government. You hate the country you live in. We get it, Peter David.
Yeah. Well, this episode has some more very entertaining bits with Raph. Or at least I found
Yes.
Raph's comments in this episode entertaining.
Given
Given that you didn't like the rest of the episode, would you consider the bits with Raph to be the highlight of the episode?
Honestly, I don't remember them that well, but yes, I probably did really enjoy it. There was one thing I liked about the antagonist alien. Notice too the blue, green, and red eye. Very
Yeah.
It's still kind of a throwback to War of the
Yeah,
Worlds.
that is yeah, the Benton wiki also mentions his eyes being a reference to War of the Worlds as well.
But I did.
But yeah,
He has the ability to go invisible, and Gwen is able to track him through mana. So she's trying
yeah.
to guide. Was it Kevin?
Yeah.
Kevin's trying to fight this invisible guy. He's to your right, but by the time she says it, it's too late, and he's getting walloped. And he's like,
Yeah.
"Thanks for all your help there, Gwen."
See, now I thought for sure that it was going to be one of those things like in the Invisible Man where like they throw a paint or something on him so they could see him.
Yeah, and what I didn't understand was why did Gwen not bother? She could have made him glow with mana. She could have shot him herself with her bolts or whatever. But no, it just became a gag, you know?
Yeah. And also, this is where we have Ultimate Wildmutt, who has a tail for some reason. I know that the adult Wolfmancers from the original series had tails. I kind of assumed that it was kind of an adult thing that they would have tails, and then that, you know, children or adolescent Wolfmancers don't have tails. Because the 16-year-old Wildmutt that Ben turns into in this episode doesn't have a tail, just like the original series one, and that was a 10-year-old Wolfmancer. But when he went Ultimate, then he has a tail. So I don't know if the tail is indicative of the age, or if there's some other reason for Wolfmancers not having tails or not having tails. That's just a weird little detail that I noticed and found slightly strange. Yeah, I think, yeah, for me, Raph was definitely the highlight of the episode, because there's just this bit where he, like, when the prisoner 775, when he hijacks the plumber ship and Ben turns into Raph and tries to chase after him, he's like trying to stop the ship, and he's like, "Let me tell you something, stolen plumber ship."
Yeah.
and then when he's like, when the ship starts tearing itself apart a little bit because he's attacking it, and then he starts falling. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna use gravity against me?"
Yeah.
And then as he's falling, he's like, "Let me tell you something, gravity." And then he hits the ground, and you see like a Looney Tunes like raft-shaped hole in the floor.
That's the one I was getting to. Yeah. Let me tell you something, stupid raft-sized hole.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole scene of Raph's probably my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, he's definitely not my favorite alien. And then Gwen's just looking at him like, "Dude, stop attacking
He's
our
like,
hole."
"What? Sorry."
Yeah. Also, this alien right here, the when Ben when he's like arrested by the plumbers and taken away, and Ben scans his DNA before they take him away, so that he can then turn into that species. Yeah. Well, at the end of the episode, he says he calls him Overkill, but that's more of like as a callback to an earlier thing that the characters were talking about earlier in the episode.
Yeah, because he said something like, "Isn't that?" I think Kevin said to him about one of his aliens. "Isn't that Overkill?" He goes, "No, if I had one named Overkill, I would have named him Overkill."
Yeah, exactly. The other thing too is this I don't think has a payoff, but it's certainly implied that it could be. He does the scan of this alien who we assume is the last of his kind. Well, the Omnitrix can repopulate his world, you know?
Yeah. I don't think they ever mentioned that his entire species, because he mentions that he was on his home planet. He was a part of a resistance fighting a tyrannical government, or something like that. And that while he was trapped here, the rebellion lost, and his wife and child were killed, along with all the other rebels. And that's his whole motivation for attacking the attacking the general here.
blame him?
And we even have the bit when Ben turns into Ultimate Wildman and and fights him and then defeats him.
Mm-hmm.
There is that moment where the alien himself is he says to Ben, he's like finish me, do it.
Yeah.
And he's like please do it. I want to be with my family.
Yeah.
That was so sad.
Yeah, and we even end with this shot of him like curled up on the floor, upset. And Ben, even when he turns back to himself, he even like turns to the general and says some threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so this is the dangerous alien that you're keeping locked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Dumbass. Like my shiny glass.
Do you think there could have been like an actual decent story in this whole setup?
Yeah, I think if it wasn't so heavy-handedly preachy, it definitely could have been a much better story, but they just lost me because they just went too far with it.
I do find it a shame that they never actually show the inside of the of like this prison complex under Area 51.
Well, thankfully, it's very clear that they decided they were not going to continue with that storyline because the plumbers come along, take all the aliens away, and you get the impression that it's just all decommissioned and done.
Yeah, because I would have liked to have seen what aliens were actually in there. Maybe if there were any aliens that we would recognize or any that we won't recognize. Because obviously, this alien in particular, obviously we've never seen him before, especially since the fact that his DNA isn't even in a part of the Omnitrix until after this episode.
Which
so that kind of tells me his
why
species was not in range of when Asimov collected all the DNA for the Omnitrix.
Or that's the other reason that I thought that perhaps his species was all wiped out. Perhaps the Civil War wiped out the entire species except for him.
Yeah, I think he said something about him being in there for 50 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 50 years. Although I'm pretty sure Asimov is far older than 50 years. And I don't know when exactly he started constructing the Omnitrix or the prototypes. I don't know when he actually started making the prototypes.
Well, I know in a much later episode that we are not going to get to today, Asmus does talk about his younger years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason he created, or more elaboration on the reason he created the Omnitrix.
Right.
Right. And,
yeah, we'll save that for a later
hundred...
stream when we get to it.
Yeah, just from that, I got the impression he's several hundred years old, like Yoda.
Yeah, he's old. He's an old timer. That's true. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the rest, or season. Well, what we've been referring to as season 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I've named it season 2 in the actual stream. So next, well, no, not next week. So in 2 weeks we'll be doing the first 10 episodes of season 3. So that will be that'll be from I think it's The Purge to
Night to Remember.
Yeah, that's it. Purge to Night to Remember.
So we're ready. We already seen them.
Yeah.
We already did our homework.
Yeah, we've done our homework.
Yep. And although I've been watching these episodes of the shows as we do the specific parts rather than watching all of it, but I have watched most of this before. Like Ultimate Alien. Obviously, this is a show I've watched all the way through before. Omniverse, I've seen the first 2 seasons, and then I think 2 or possibly 3 seasons later in Omniverse, and there's a whole bunch in the middle that I've not seen. So at a certain point, Omniverse is going to be like a fresh new experience for all 3 of us, rather than just you 2.
Yeah.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Bye, Melissa.
Yep.
She
Take
said
care.
she'll see you
Oh,
tonight.
yep.
sweetie.
Oh yeah.
Bye, Melissa. Oh, and also time for Wolfie to go.
Oh, yep. Have fun at work.
Well, it was nice having you here while you could.
Yep.
Oh yeah, at some point I am going to be doing a Ben 10 related stream with Wolfie
Okay.
on his channel. I haven't got a message from him when specifically that's happening, but like at some point that's gonna happen.
Cool.
I think the only reason it isn't happening soon is because he's already got other streams already planned out.
Exactly.
So
Well, it's like
I don't know
whatever.
know how far ahead Wolfie plans his streams.
I mean, it's other streams. It's life. He's
Yeah.
got his wife and kid.
Yep.
Yeah. And of course, you already know that I'm gonna be joining Daniel Harron for Star Trek 5, a rewatch of Star
Yeah,
Trek
that's
5.
gonna be great.
Oh, I thought you were kidding about that. It's like, really? Star Trek 5?
Well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. I'm probably the only one, but I actually enjoy Star Trek 5.
I don't mind it. I mean,
Yeah.
we've
I
had
understand
it a
it's
lot
not a-
worse since then.
Yeah, I understand it is not a good movie by any means, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good for what it is.
There are some good things in that film. I think that movie came out at a point when William Shatner was trying to be like the master of everything, wasn't he?
Yeah, kind
Because
of.
he had his own book series. I think there was also a video game series based on his books.
Yeah.
And of course, he was the director of Star Trek 5. I don't know if that was the only time he was a director for a movie, but I mean that's the most prominent one I know of.
The problem wasn't his directing so much as it was the influence that he had over the script. And it's the same thing that I saw with Star Trek Nemesis with Patrick Stewart. It's like, you know what? Maybe you should just play the role. You can direct it if you want to, but no, you should not be getting creative control of the stories.
Yeah. I'm probably never going to be able to watch The Next Generation the same way, especially after Star Trek Picard came out.
I know.
And all the terrible changes that were made there.
Yep.
I don't know. Troy only let me watch like maybe 3 or 4 episodes, and he's like, "We're not watching this anymore." So I have no idea what happens. He's like, "You're not watching this."
No, I've not watched it at all, but I've looked into what happens.
Yeah, and even I've heard some of the stuff that happened after we stopped watching, and my buddy Mark, his wife, is kind of wishing she had stopped watching it. She's like, this is just ridiculous. I want nothing else to do with it.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I know that there's one point where they drop the F-bomb, and it's like, if you guys use swear words to try and get your point across, but then you're not making a very good point.
Colorful metaphors. I guess they threw all that out. But anyway.
So later on we have Geeky Geezers.
Yep, that's later tonight.
Yep. Which sadly I most likely won't be there because I stayed awake. I stayed awake all night last night.
That's fine.
Because I was already like, I was already like awake in really late in the afternoon, and then when I noticed that your rewatch stream was on last night, I was like, well, I'm already awake this late. If I go to sleep now, I'll more likely oversleep and not actually be here for this stream.
Right.
So I may as well just stay awake all the way until now.
Yeah, we know. My show is just better.
Yeah, and so I'm more than likely not gonna be awake when
that's fair.
he's
That's totally fair.
Yeah. If I am, then it's either going to be that I suddenly decided to pull an all-nighter a second time in a row, or it will be because I was asleep during the afternoon and woke up during the middle of the night.
Yeah, could be. Very much.
Either one of those options would be most. Well, if you see me in the chat, then one of those two options are the most like. One of those two are the most likely.
So what time is it there now for you?
Wait, can you say that again? I didn't quite hear
What
you.
time is it for you right now?
6:30 in the afternoon.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, it's noon here.
Noon
I'm
30,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry, almost 1 p.m. here.
Yeah.
So you're 6 hours ahead of us. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if Saunago is doing any stream on Monday. I don't think she did anything last Monday.
No idea.
I think she's been
haven't been
taking
to those streams in a while.
a few breaks for the Mondays. Because I noticed she did. I think she did a Monday stream like 2-3 weeks ago. I think. And I know Saunago hasn't been super regular with the streams lately, but she has been
Yeah.
uploading videos, so there's still something on her channel.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things she's uploaded. One of them is that she's not using Bandcamp anymore. But it's like I've been so busy I haven't gotten over to Professor Geek or Sound Engraver. It's just like they'll be like done. I'll be like, oh man, I didn't get there again.
Yeah, and then we have Thursday. Obviously, Professor Geek and Big Owl are doing Lord of the Rings. I think Wolf 10 is also doing a stream on Tuesday as well. Because he normally streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. So I think there's like two different streams to choose from on both Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't actually know what he's doing. And then obviously Wednesday is what was it Daniel Heron's doing this Wednesday?
Legends of the Fall.
Okay, yeah, because he was going to do that last Wednesday, wasn't he? But something happened, and then he had to skip it and do it this week instead. And then obviously you're doing a stream on Friday.
Yep.
And then
I will be on with Sir Torrin Clegane talking about musicals, Broadway, and film interpretations.
Everybody dance.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I know I think Professor Geek's doing a stream on Friday as well. I know he did. I know the Friday just been he did a stream, but yeah, because it was the Friday before that he didn't do a stream, but he then did do a stream on Sunday instead.
And of course, if you want to get a giggle on Fridays at what time, honey, is Latino Slant?
Oh yeah, 7 Central.
Yeah.
Over on Latino Slant.
He does karaoke.
He does the karaoke geeks, and I do a song or two. Yeah, it's a fun time.
It is really fun to hear these guys, and they'll pull out songs that's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I haven't heard that song in years.
Yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes they say one I've never heard. And it's like, oh, I don't know that one, but I like it. You know.
Yeah, let's. Is that about everything for what's
I think
happening?
so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if we wrap this up now. Yep. Let the Matrix light your darkest hour. Do all are one.